egg, egg, egg.
Attention all passengers. Please fasten your seatbelts as we begin our final approach. The forecast at our destination calls for clear skies with a 100% chance of funk. We ask that you use caution when exiting the craft, as the contents of your mind may have blown during transit. Thank you for choosing Lady World Airlines. And welcome to Planet Base.
Egg.
Could keep going all night, baby.
And that's what we're gonna do. That's the stream today.
We're so awesome. We're so fucking
We're
awesome.
awesome.
I love that. Oh my god. And you
We're
know
the
what?
best.
What a fucking joy it is to be here right now in beautiful US of A, California, Massachusetts.
Where I live.
Where I live. California or Massachusetts? Ohio.
It's. I live in the state of California,
Okay.
in the city of Massachusetts,
Massachusetts.
on the street
Of Ohio.
of Ohio.
And your house is called?
Dennis.
I was thinking
I don't feel
Carl.
safe.
What the fuck are we talking about?
Living.
Oh, period. Ain't that just the only thing one can ever talk about? Life.
Oh, I should make it so that actually like goes.
Should I? Oh, can you program that?
Oh shit. That's not the bit that was supposed to be there.
So true.
And yeah, I can't do that because I'm amazing.
You are.
Thank you. You too.
You first. It is you time. You are amazing.
But my streams are always my time.
Oh. Well.
I can share.
Oh, okay.
It's like when as a little kid and you got a friend over to your house. It's a complete fucking dick move to then play a single player game and you don't let your friend play.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Speaking from experience, it happened to me. Fucking asshole. Bitch.
I thought for 1 second you were the one who was playing the single player game.
No.
And you were being like, I was a child, but I've grown. I'm
Well, I mean, there is stuff that I did when I was a kid that I'm like, I wouldn't do it today, of course, but it was not that.
Yeah, the drug trade really wasn't very cool, sorry.
Made a lot of money though.
Jesse. Dave, wetenschap, Dave.
Ja, Dave.
Ja, Dave, wetenschap, Dave.
Oh my god.
Hello, Chad.
Hi, Chad.
Sorry.
How are you? I'm not sorry.
We're not
what
sorry.
You're here for.
This is what you're here for. Whenever we stream together, it's more like a podcast.
It becomes more like a podcast, yeah.
Going 10
Normal man.
Just man.
Thank you so much for the bits. Thank you, Egg Buddy.
Oh, we got a bunch of eggs, huh?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh fuck yeah.
By the end of last night's stream, I had like 50 eggs. It was insane.
Jesus. What are you
Yeah.
gonna make with 50 eggs? Big ass omelet.
Big ass omelet, you know, Neopets.
Oh fuck yeah, dude.
Fuck yeah,
We're gonna
dude.
go back to the fucking Neolithic period.
When are we gonna stream Neopets together?
When are we gonna stream Neopets?
Because I feel like that would be extremely fun.
I would want two of our Neopets to get married and then have a super messy divorce.
That would be fun.
That would be very fun.
That would
Should
be
we
so
stream
fun.
Neopets together? We should also stream that other thing that we were gonna do. I don't know if it's a secret, if I can say it.
No, because we announced it and then it like didn't happen after all. I'm pretty sure we announced it.
Did we announce it? I don't think we did. I don't think we did.
No, I don't think we did.
Oh my god, secret! Yippee!
Secret. Or did we?
I don't.
Because I think I made an announcement image for it, and I tend to do that when I announce it.
Beep beep boop beep beep boop 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 boop
What the
boop
fuck is that shit?
beep beep boop beep beep.
Okay, yeah, I made
boop.
an image
Oh!
for it.
That's cute. No, I think you made it and then sent it to me, and we're like, "This looks look good," and I said yes, and then we never announced it.
Whoops.
The secret thing is, so we can tell you if you announced it. Well, that's tricky, huh?
Yeah,
That's tricky.
that is. Okay, hold on, let me.
I think Wednesday is spelled with a D in there somewhere.
No.
Okay.
I've decided this is my thing that I do.
Okay.
That I've done for a while now.
Yes.
Where I spell Wednesday the way that as you say it.
Yes.
Because Wednesday is not what it is.
Just like Connecticut. It should be spelled Connecticut, not Connecticut. Connecticut.
It's because it connects people.
Het connect je kut. Met andere kutten.
That's true. That's true.
I am always saying this.
Hold on, let me see if we ever announced it. I don't know if we care about keeping it a secret that much. though.
No.
I feel like we could just.
Alright then, keep your secrets.
That's a good timing. I feel like we could just say it.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Hey everyone.
Hi.
It's
How
not
are
that.
you?
We're probably hyping it up too much anyway. So we should probably just say it.
Yeah, we're gonna play Lego Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. We're gonna find like a day, like 2 days where we do
Yeah.
2 long streams so we can play through the entirety of Lego Lord of the Rings together.
And I'm gonna be Pippin. I've been excited for this ever since I was born.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
She's always had this excitement inside of her, and she tells me about it, and it's like I feel like it involves you, and I'm like, I don't. Can you tell me more? And she's like, no, I don't know.
I don't
and then I suggested let's play Lego Lord of the Rings together, and she was
And
like, that's right.
I just cried.
Yeah.
It was just like this big revelation for me.
It's true. It's true.
Wednesday.
Wednesday. It was gonna be a charity stream, but then,
Then everything was resolved. Just everything.
yeah,
Charity was no longer necessary.
the world peace and everything.
We fixed
Yeah.
it.
The delisted game is Lego Lord of the Rings delisted. I mean, I got it. Don't even worry about it.
Don't even fucking worry about it.
See, there it is. It's installed and everything.
Oh yay!
Let's play it right now.
Let's go!
No, let's not do that.
Should we? You don't have to introduce yourself.
I mean,
should
I
make
tend to
it.
still do that anyway, just a little bit.
Let's introduce
But I
ourselves.
think it got canceled because I was like sad about not getting the surgery after all or something.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. That's the. Wait, no.
No, it's
that
not,
wasn't-
'cause that was earlier.
That was earlier. It was.
Maybe I was just sad about something else. I don't know. I get depressed sometimes.
Me too.
Yeah.
Ain't that just the way?
Yeah, I get just the way.
I forgot what it was specifically.
Was I just like overworked? Was it because you weren't available after all?
Maybe. Let me see. Maybe.
Maybe. See, that's relevant.
And that's all. We can make jokes.
We can make jokes. Chad,
Chad, just so you know,
just one of our skills is that we can make jokes.
Lord of.
What?
Lord of.
Lord up.
What the fuck was I doing December?
You sure are, Amy.
So you so sure are.
You should. But yeah, we're excited to play this game.
You are in my agenda.
Oh, well.
I don't have agenda, but I do have an agenda.
Nice, I like it.
Thanks.
But yeah, we were really excited to play Lego Lord of the Rings because I actually really like this game. I love how it really makes you take the journey. You know, it's not like other Lego games where you just have like your little hub area and it's like all the levels lined up. No, you actually walk through Mordor from one level to another.
Interesting. I didn't know. I only played Lego Star Wars.
Well, yeah. Well, that's why I like this one so much because you literally get to go through Mordor. It's fun, or through Middle Earth. I like it. I think it's a good time.
Gollum is so ugly.
He is, yeah. It's a big part of
Its character. It's very essential. It's just like, you know, the anime girls with the big boobies. It's essential to his character that he's ugly.
It's not
with
essential
huge
to the anime
boobs.
girls. They're just dumb.
Gollum's huge boobs are essential to his
Gollum's
character.
big natural.
His fucking G cups. G for Gollum.
Oh my god. Lego Lord of the Rings was one of the first really open world Lego games, I think. I think so, yeah. I think it might have been the first, honestly.
Was it?
Yeah.
What was the first Lego game actually? Like from a franchise?
From one of the first franchise Lego game. I think it was just Lego Star Wars,
Cute.
which was the prequel movies.
I remember being Anakin, killing all those children.
That was a good time.
It was a really good time.
I don't remember if you do that or not. I feel like you might actually.
I personally got to do it.
Yeah.
I got the Rose edition. Oh, you get to kill.
You did the mocap for.
And a VR headset.
The first ever Lego game was Lego Island. I believe so, yes. That was the first Lego
Skeleton.
game, but the first IP Lego game was Lego Star Wars. Also, I'm scared from skeleton things.
Oh,
It's when I streamed Lego Star Wars and I got genuinely scared by a Lego skeleton. It was very dumb.
When did you get scared?
It's because, okay, so Lego Island is a childhood experience for me. You know,
Yes.
I played that a lot as a kid.
Yes.
And at one point you go in a cave. Or, well, you
no.
can go in a cave because it's an open world game.
Oh no.
Meaning, actually, Lego Island was the first Lego open world game. So, and you go in like an old cave, and there's I think 2, but maybe there's 3, but there's at least 2 things in this room, in
Yes,
this cave.
in this cave.
1 is a treasure chest.
Oh, fun.
2 is a door.
No.
Yes.
2 things you can open in one room?
I know.
De wonderen zijn de wereld nog niet uit.
Squid.
Leave.
I'm scared.
Away with ye.
Away with
Wild
the thing.
creature. Away with the thing. To the dungeon.
To the dungeon with thee. Anyway, and in my memory, first of all, the game was already English, I think.
Yes.
Or in any case, for some reason, I wasn't really able to understand some of the dialogue in the game. I don't know if it was translated or not.
Mm-hmm.
So when you interact with the door, you hear a voice behind it that as a kid I didn't really understand.
It just says, don't open the door, I'm a skeleton.
It's like a pirate captain who's like talking about some, like nothing. He just like does little jokes or something. I forget what he says. And you can open a treasure chest. And in my memory, I was so scared of this cave because there was a spooky voice and something else. Something pops out or something. I don't freaking remember.
He was just saying, yardy har, you shiver me timbers.
Yeah, probably exactly that. And then I went in the cave on
No.
stream. You know, I went in the cave on stream, and with the memory of I was scared as a kid. But I mean, it's nothing now.
Yes.
Right. So I interact with the door, and it talks. I already forgot what it said. And then I interact with the treasure chest.
Yes.
And a kitty cat comes out.
Oh, that scared me.
It's just a little kitty cat, and he does a little loop-de-loop, and then he goes back in.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's not so bad.
That's cute.
Um,
I'm no longer afraid.
but still, in the back of my head is like the dread that I had as a kid from this cave.
Yes, yes,
Because it's one of those things.
Yes.
You know, that like random moments in my life, I will think back of how scared I was of this cave as a kid.
Yes.
So I'm in here now, and there's nothing scary going on. The music is a bit different. In my memory, the music was very scary. It was just kind of, it's just sort of like, oh, mystery music.
Spooky,
It's
spooky.
Not, it's
Yeah.
not scary at all.
Battery!
Oh, we're hurt.
Concussion.
Yeah, concussions.
Let me hear it for concussions, everybody. Woo!
I'm Con.
I'm Cushion.
And we're the concussions.
I was gonna say the car batteries.
How about I'm Brain?
And I'm Damaged.
And we're the Concussion Sisters.
Yeah! Woo!
Hi, Diesel.
Hi, Diesel.
So I open the chest, the cat comes out, it goes back in, and then I like interact with it. That was very good.
We workshopped that joke.
Like 1 second, like with like telepathical
Yeah,
powers.
just like meaningful eye contact. I was like, got it, damaged.
Yeah. Thank you for giving a shout out to Diesel. Very good.
Thank you.
And then I open the chest again, not really expecting anything, but then a skeleton pops out.
No!
And it doesn't pop out very fast. It doesn't like get up in the camera. It just goes up.
Whee!
Yeah, basically. And because I'm in that mindset of, man, I was so scared of this as a kid, and then a skeleton pops out after like a kitty cat, so I still go.
Aw. You know what?
It's the same stream where I was down bad for a Lego girl. she was like a butch mechanic.
Oh, but listen.
Yeah, right.
Listen.
It's
Oh, of course you have her up here. Oh my god, she's bald? Queen! Oh my god, hi, Boots! She's so fucking... With the cowboy hat? Okay.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm fucking saying.
Let me see your bald head, Queen.
See, chat? She gets
Fuck
it.
yeah.
They get it. They get it.
That's okay. Yeah!
Like Benji Strikes has the combo of Lego Conquistador skeleton and Zoe consistently embarrassing herself in front of the butch mechanic was definitely one of the streams of all time. I was embarrassing myself.
What were you doing?
Oh no, you ball in your head. I don't fully. The hat was pretty expensive, by the way. Like, relatively speaking.
Wait, you.
Yeah. No, I had to buy all the pieces separately.
Oh my god.
She's not sold as is.
You are down bad.
Yep. I don't. This Phil Girl stream, yeah. I don't fully remember everything that I did. We can watch it because I think I made a compilation of it anyway. Hey, so we've been here for 22 minutes.
Have we been here for 22 minutes? Oh my god, time
Well, that is plus the countdown, which was like 7. So
Oh, okay.
we've been here for like 15 minutes, which is still
Time flies when you're having fun.
yeah, right. So how about we introduce ourselves? Hello everyone, I'm Zoe Gauntlet Queen. Yay! I'm a streamer.
And I'm Damage. And we're the Concussions. Hi, I'm Rose. I'm an artist. I'm Zoe's friend.
Yeah.
I love her very much.
I love her too.
We just ate Greek food, and I had to eat beans. I'm very brave.
You didn't have to, but you did it anyway.
I did it because
which
I'm
makes you so
very
brave.
Yeah. What else should I say?
Pronouns.
My pronouns are they, them, and I like to draw.
Yeah.
And I drew the us up there.
And it's extremely good.
Thank you so much. And I'm very happy to be here again. It's always been too long, dude.
Every single time.
Every single time.
Yeah.
Even when we're gonna be playing the Lord of the Rings stream and it's gonna be one-on-one.
Yeah,
2
one day
days,
after.
I'm gonna be like, God, it's been too long.
It's been too long. We should have been streaming 24 hours.
That would kill me, I think.
Yeah.
But it will be delightful until I die. Dead.
So maybe it's worth it.
Maybe it's worth it. Oh, thank you so... Clone, we were talking about you at length, about how you are just like a pillar of society.
You're so like on top of it always.
You are everything.
You're the best.
You are the best.
You're the best. Thank
And
you also to Muzz, the new mod, who is also the best.
you are also the best.
How to make the U-bot stand up? Exclamation point stand. Or jump. Which also works, and then you should stand up real fun, like, because then you do a little jump.
Yahoo!
Yay! Let's play video games, shall we? Unless you have
There
something
was
else.
something important that I had to say, but I forgot. Oh, egg!
Oh yeah, we have to do eggs.
But that was the thing, egg.
And songs.
Songs?
Songs. Let's see what songs we've got first. Rose's Choice. Just like stick it on one of the hair wings or something. I don't know.
Oh my god.
Which one of the Sonic characters here would you like?
Well, you know, I like a man of principle. I like a man who knows what he wants. I like a man who understands his purpose in life.
And loves nature.
Yeah, an actor. Like proactive. He doesn't react, he acts. He loves nature. He's a real go-getter, this one.
Put him here.
And I respect him.
Good. And he probably wouldn't care about you. I was gonna say he respects you, but he
Does he not? Does Knuckles not respect me? Get him out of here! I want Tails! I want a man who is kind!
Alright. Goodbye, Knuckles.
I no longer respect you. What? All I say about Tails is that he's kind and all those other great things. Well, he's not very principled. He doesn't love nature, I don't think.
I love any like comics and shit about Tails not having like like lacking morals. Where
He does.
I mean, kinda. He just broke into like a military facility, started shooting up the place one time.
Wait,
Like
with a
even
gun?
Yeah, with a gun.
Okay. Who gave him a gun?
He made it. It's real. It happens in Sonic Adventure too.
You know what? I believe you. Isn't he like 12?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think he's younger. Is he 12? Yeah. What's his deal? Is he 8? I think he's 8.
Jesus.
He's 5. Safe bet.
Safe bet.
Safe
Fine.
bet.
5-year-old. Safe.
No, it is more of the military. That's true. He is 8 years old. Yeah, with Gundam rights. That's it.
I was just fucking overcome with 9 boyfriends at a time. I'll have to tell that story in a little bit.
Oh my god, it's amazing. My new favorite thing about you.
Ah.
All right, let's see.
I love when we stream together because we just joke the whole time. I sometimes like to watch the streams back and make clips.
Uh-huh.
It is impossible because it's a continuous clip.
Okay, let's see. I'm getting the controllers ready, chat.
In the meantime, hello chat. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
I'm going to kill the chat.
No, don't kill the chat. They are kind.
Explode the chat.
They are kind.
It's time to blow up the chat.
They are just
Every
innocent
U-bot.
men.
Every U-bot explode.
No.
There they go.
No. We're just normal men. Why did you program this?
I didn't. This is the feature.
Bye. Yippee. Yippee.
This is Lord of the Rings or Cookie Cream?
Both.
Neither. And more.
And more.
Wait.
It's
This one.
both, neither, more,
feel safe.
less.
Either.
Schneider?
Cut.
Okay, stream is over.
Okay, which controller would you like?
I'm presuming you would like pink.
I'm actually going to decide
Oh.
that you get this one because the cable's on it. Which is also what you said, so you should check that.
I'm so smart and wise.
Go get it! Explode yourself right meow!
I
love to explode and die. It's
enrichment for me.
Yeah, it's for the U-bots. It's enrichment for the U-bots. I love the lore about the U-bots that they are. It's users like connecting with the system and like they get into like a little robot, like they're controlling a robot from home, but their mind forms the connection and most of the brain functions goes to just maintaining it. So every U-bot has ADHD. I call it basically ADHD,
Oh,
like
don't-
capitalized.
Don't forget Eggs and Derek had.
Oh, thanks so much. Oh, Derek had two.
We
Yeah,
have
that's
been
important.
so fucking ADD pilled all day. We have not been able to have a single conversation without rabbit holing. Egg.
When has that ever not been the case?
It's been especially outrageous today.
I suppose you might be true, right?
I might
correct.
be true, yes. I'm sitting here.
You're real.
True.
You're real. So
So
real
we
for
have to stop. It's been years. I'm gone.
that. No.
The car accident wasn't your fault, except it was, but like it was mostly my fault. Like you maybe shouldn't have lit the fireworks, but like I was driving without a steering wheel. Maybe that's on me.
I mean, I did like take the steering wheel out as a joke,
Yeah, but like
but
Yeah,
but then I offered to give it back and you said no.
yeah, I was like I can do this with just my legs. Look at me. And then yeah, I died, dead.
No, you're still here.
So you have to let me go.
No. Okay, can I let you go to ask you to refill my water bottle while I do the eggs?
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, my old man legs.
Also, get yourself one
Oh,
if you don't have a water bottle here yet. I mean, I know you have a water bottle, but like, get it
yes.
here. You know. It wasn't as though you've been in the USA for less than an hour and have already died in a car crash. Classic America.
Classic America. That's what you get in Ohio. I can't fucking believe this shit. This would have never happened in Connecticut.
You're so right. ADHD, Autonomous Drone Hierarchy Directive. Due to a coding error, everything has a low priority and the drones can't decide on what to do. Please don't laugh at the imploding U-bots. They only do that when they're scared. U-bots actually explode for a number of reasons, canonically. Excitement, when their user disconnects, just for no reason, just because they feel like it. U-bots are fun. Alright, so I remembered a hat, which you said the closest thing to a bunny hat, to bunny ears. So let's see. I've got just the thing.
Oh no. Derek! You're gonna be so dripped.
Drip.
Where can I put this beautiful?
Derek truly is a man of principle.
He's a man of principles, he loves nature, he knows what he wants.
Uh-huh.
You know what? And he respects me.
He does.
He respects
Derek absolutely respects you for
Oh,
sure.
Yay, okay.
Did you have a bottle? Like, why did you use a mug?
Do I have a bottle? I don't have a bottle.
You got like the thing from your job.
Mm! That's not a bottle. That's a...
Sort of like a bottle. What is this? This is anything? No.
Isn't a bottle sort of like a mug? Concave liquid.
But it's closed off.
Sippable.
It's.
I'm covering the mug with my hand right
Yeah, it's yeah.
Sorry, the comedic timing in real life was...
We can turn the camera on if you want.
No, I look like Garbo.
You don't.
My hair is all greasy.
Fine.
Okay, do it for 1 second.
Okay. See, this is good. This is the thing that I like about doing these kinds of streams, because I don't have to take off all my makeup when I start streaming, so the facial capture can actually see. How do I do this again? Oh, I guess I don't have a button for that on my little thing. Give me just a second.
In the meantime, hi chat, how are you?
Hi.
Hello! Was it 1 second?
Not even.
Bring us back.
Okay.
For 3 seconds this time.
Okay.
Where's the camera?
1,
There.
2,
Wait.
3.
Hello!
There you go.
That was great, we did it.
That's all you get.
That's all you get.
Alright, bottles and mug with a hat. What a hat.
Yeah! No, surreal!
Right, okay. Egg time.
Egg time!
Time for egg.
I love how you were like, could you refill my bottle as
I know.
do the eggs?
I know. Melzanov and Vex Fidel.
Whee! Sorry, Melzanov, I was reading the chat. Hello!
Clone.
Hello! Whee!
Mecha VT.
Macafiti!
Esteemed Jester.
Hello!
Oh.
They were flashback for a moment.
We just wanted to try it out.
Yeah.
Didn't stick. Muzzle Flash.
Whee!
Rootsatera.
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 That's a cool name.
Honestly, yeah, it is, yeah.
The Egg Buddy.
The Egg Ooh,
Oh.
The Egg Buddy. Who's next? You volunteered.
Banshee Strikes.
There you go.
Whee! Wow. Should we do one-on-one?
I guess. Polar Stars.
Whee! Shotoria, welcome to the stream. No, wait, yeah.
Okay. Kira Cat.
Yeah, woo! And good old classic Fuzzball Dave.
Wibblers.
Wibblers!
That's a-
and the one and only, the real Nephronus? Nephronus.
I always say Nephronus.
Hello, Nephronus.
Windows Millennium Edition
That's a nice name.
is starting the second act stack.
And we're chilling with Chiliac.
That's cute. Man, thanks so much for sharing your awesome meme mixtape.
Whee!
I'll be sure to listen to that.
We're swimming with Squid Liminal.
And new to the Justice League, it's the Crimson Flasher.
Not the 5th, not the 6th, it's okay, the 4th. 4.
Oh, they'll love that. They love the number 4.
Oh, yay.
Thank you so much
Whee!
for all the eggs today.
Thank you for
Starting
all the
eggs.
eggs.
And thanks for all the eggs. Me when I, like my chickens. Thanks for the eggs, chickens.
Okay, yeah. Got it. Yippee!
Yippee!
Thanks for all the eggs.
Thanks for all
God,
the
I
eggs.
would fucking love a chicken as a pet, bro.
That would be very fun.
I think it would also be very in tune with, like, me to have a chicken. Or maybe like a big screaming bird.
Yes.
Yes. You know, one of those yellow birds with the blushy cheeks and the kuif
Yeah,
with?
yeah.
I want one of those.
Dude, next time we're in Amsterdam, did you know at the station they have a restaurant and they have one of those?
Bitch,
Yeah,
let's fucking go.
it's a beautiful restaurant too.
Are
It's
we gonna
wild.
go to Amsterdam when we're gonna go to the concert? Is that Amsterdam?
Yeah, it's Amsterdam.
Fuck you, bro!
It's wild because the whole
Oh, Mike loves rabbit!
Did you get your egg?
Michael's rabbit! I'm so sorry!
We missed 2 eggs. What happened? Oh wait, because there's a new one. Michael's rabbit. Sorry that we missed you. So big apologies.
Mike loves rabbit and we love you.
And Aaron got twitched. Thank you as well for your egg. Thank you. I miss them sometimes. I miss eggs occasionally. Sorry about that. Fix now.
I thought you were talking about like missing, like... Oh, I
Yeah,
miss
like, yeah,
eggs.
forlorn, yeah.
Not after the cataclysm, the eggs just weren't the same.
Me with like bananas. Bananas are different now, dude.
Bananas have changed.
Yeah, dude.
Look at them go.
Look at them go. Look at all the U-bots. Woo! They get stuck sometimes, so then we have to pull them out. You know?
I love the hard glasses.
Thank you. I'm very proud of them. I think they look very cute.
How do you actually... Is that M?
Oh, that one. Yeah,
that M?
that's M, yeah.
M!
I am.
I am! Wait, is it actually M?
That's M, yeah.
I am!
At least I think so. Hold on, can anybody use
Bananas are just like us.
M's U-bot skin, or was it only... Or can only they use it? I forgot. Maybe it's just someone... No, okay, I don't think it's M. I think it's just someone using M's head and torso.
I don't have a...
Because the hands are different.
I should make a U-bot.
Pay me money.
Okay. How much?
A lot.
Oh wait,
Look. There's hats. Hang on. Yeah, you can wear hats and stuff.
everyone can use
Okay,
these.
so it's Diesel. It's not M. It's Diesel.
Hi Diesel!
Hi, Diesel.
Bonjour, you look incredible, Diesel.
Yeah. Diesel's super nice. Anyway, what was I saying?
We're talking about going
America.
to Amsterdam with the
That's
eggs.
the one. Amsterdam.
Yes, America and Amsterdam, same thing.
I mean,
With them birds.
they're both like,
BRB swagging myself. You're always
fuck
swag,
yeah,
Diesel.
fuck yeah, put some hat on. So there's a, okay, so the Amsterdam station is it's all like modern now. From the outside, it's still very like a beautiful old building, but on the inside, it's all modernized and stuff, you know.
I've been there very recently. No, I haven't.
Oh, you haven't.
I'm just lying to
Oh
you.
my god, you little
Good for me.
shit.
Good for me.
This is a lie.
I love
What a
lying.
cure.
I'm okay. Well, okay, fuck, I have to think of a line. I can think of a line. It's a good song.
It's a really good song. All this.
This is the guy from the Gorillas.
America and Amsterdam both have Six Flags, according to Sam Reich. Yay! Thank you very
Hello.
much. Thank you so much, Akai4, for resubscribing.
Welcome. Like 1, 2, 3.
For
we
6
didn't
months
accept.
in advance. Whoa, I didn't even know you could do that.
Oh wow.
Damn. Oh wait, do we get just 6? Do we get it 6 times now?
Wait. Okay, wait.
Oh, okay. All right, good.
I was excited.
But thanks so much. I didn't know you could like buy multiple subscriptions in advance. That's so cool.
Okay,
Thanks so
4.
much.
This is why
That's so
1,
fucking
2,
real.
and 3.
Oh shit! Whoa, thanks so much for giving a sub to Man on Toilet.
This is why we didn't accept a K1, 2, 3. They did
That's
not
so
have this fucking
real.
swag.
So fucking real.
Akai 4, this is why you're the Akai.
This is you're the ultimate.
Ultimate.
This is why there's no 5 or 6.
5 or 6? Fuck them.
Don't exist.
7?
One,
No.
1, 2, 3, big
Ew.
hits. 5
Gross.
and 6 and more than that don't exist. They stopped at 4 because it's the best one.
4. Listen, it's dividable. It is humble. It leads to the most beautiful numbers, such as 8, a classic. 16?
So good.
Huh?
What?
I heard a voice.
Yeah, there's a TTRPG or a TTS Dutch voice.
What did she say?
Akai4 gifted a tier 1 sub to Man on Toilet, but
did
with a
she-
Dutch accent.
Why did she speak Dutch to me?
Because I could make it Dutch.
Oh, good.
So it's not like a Dutch accent. It's literally just like a Dutch TTS trying to pronounce English stuff. It's very funny. Oh, speaking of, over Nederlands gesproken.
Ja, over Nederlands gesproken.
Ja, dus je hebt het station in Amsterdam. Ja. Het is heel, oorspronkelijk heel uit het station, maar ze
Ja.
hebben dus binnenkant hebben ze helemaal nieuwe fight en zo.
Nieuwe fight.
Vernieuwd.
Spreek het Nederlands. Nieuwificeerd. Ja, geplastificeerd.
Oh, het wordt ook nog zo praten.
Ik ga dood.
Ja, dat weet ik. Dus... Ja, dat weet ik. Ja, dat weet ik. Dus, maar het heel mooi is dat op de tweede verdieping hebben ze oud restaurant wat er altijd was.
Aha.
En die hebben ze nog steeds en die hebben ze behouden zoals het vroeger was. Dus de architectuur is helemaal anders. It's really beautiful. I will also go high-pitched. Okay.
No, wait, I promise not to say that on stream.
Don't.
No. Just kidding. Wait, where's M?
That one in between? It's not actually Emmett's season.
I took your arm, thanks for the arm, Bozo.
Ow, my gauntlet. It's not my gauntlet, it's just the It's, you took it from the fucking... I made that for you.
You took it.
It's like I give you a gift, you're like, I've stolen this.
I fucking love the heart-shaped sunglasses.
Thank you. I like the googly eye anime sunglasses.
Very homestuck. I love it.
Yeah, it's like during the voting process, I think it was that like the googly eyes and the anime sunglasses got they got the same amount of votes, so we just combined them. Let me be fucked up and evil. I totally stole it. No, Diesel, it's fine. It's very It's very like in character for you bots to be like, I've stolen this, and I'm just like, I gave it to you. I'm like, I'm causing trouble. It's like this. You're playing.
This is enrichment.
Yeah. Lesbian colored, are they?
Are they?
Are the heart-shaped glasses lesbian colored?
Wait, let's see.
Not really.
I mean,
But you can have lesbian colored U-bot gauntlets and body. You can do that.
it's because the pink and the yellow are next to each other, so they look very like the lesbian.
Well,
Look at them.
Okay,
Look at them
alright,
go.
okay, alright.
I see the vision.
Okay, alright, okay, alright, okay, alright.
How long have we been streaming without playing a video game?
About 35 minutes.
Good for us, honestly.
us.
Let's shake on it.
Let's shake on it.
Good job.
Good
Queen.
job. Well, that was a great stream.
Let's go.
Goodbye, everyone.
We're gonna go to Amsterdam to see a bird.
Uh-huh. Oh, so yeah, so they have a bird in there. In the restaurant, also.
I wanna go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go. I mean, we'll be at the station probably when we go there, so we can just...
Should we go early?
We should. I mean, we're gonna go early anyway, right? So we can see the park where the... Yeah.
Have you checked the train times back?
No, not yet.
You will have to.
Yeah, I know.
You two should have a podcast. Do you remember that I wanted to do like a podcast about Ruby?
Yeah.
Should we fucking do that? It's uninteresting.
I feel that it would be better... Okay, it could be very... Because I feel like it would be to our detriment to try to only talk about Ruby. So I feel like it would be better to either have a podcast that is about... Thank you very much, Mothman, for the donation.
Thank you, Mothman.
Thank you. So I think it would be better to either have a podcast about nothing specific, just us talking, and then have an episode or two about Ruby, or have a podcast that is advertised as being about Ruby, and it only rarely is.
Which would be just anything we advertise our podcast as. It's very rarely about that. We're like, today we're going to talk about climate change. Instead, it's just the whole time we talk about TTRPG characters.
Yeah.
I fucking love Ferrinte. She's purple.
She's so purple.
She's so fucking purple.
I fucking love how he's white.
He's white.
He's white.
White as fuck, bro.
He's white as fuck.
White as fuck, bro. Oh yeah, climate change, no joke.
It's not. It's
It's very serious.
Speaking of white,
Speaking of white,
the ice caps there.
they're really well. Speaking of purple, the yams are really really threatened by this climate change.
I guess that's true. Most things are.
What else is purple? Ferrinte.
Some flowers. Ferrinte.
Ferrinte, we fucking love Ferrinte.
Real Ferrinte. That's my TTRPG character for Pathfinder campaign right now.
Yeah, we play every Monday. It has been such a fucking delight.
It's the first time that Rose gets to play in like a long form
Yeah.
campaign together with me and the other players. She usually only joins like one shots and stuff.
I used to join one shots and then be kind of an observer whenever everyone else played the campaign. But now I'm in, and I was like, oh, I
to win
wonder,
it.
I wonder how it's gonna go. I wonder if I'm gonna be good at it. And now none of us can stop thinking about this fucking game. It's the best.
God, they and me are just we will not stop talking about each other's characters because we love them so much. It's Pathfinder 2nd edition also. Alright, let's see. Let's actually play this fucking video game for once in our
I wonder
goddamn
if I can
lives.
still play a video game. It's been a while since I touched anything ever.
It's true, you've been hovering.
I'm just hovering here in the middle of the room. Hello, Zoe, my friend.
Hi guys.
Hello, how was your day?
It's alright.
Like increasingly, my eyes begin to glow, and my voice grows more and more bass boosted.
Yeah, it's a good time.
That's June.
Why is not all devices detected? What is happening in the world today?
Climate change.
That's-
Haven't you seen the yams?
It's the name of our podcast.
Haven't you seen the yams? Oh fuck!
What's going on?
What the fuck is happening? This reminds me yesterday when me and Luke wanted to watch a movie and instead we spent 5 hours talking about stupid bullshit.
Sounds good. Just looking at. Wait, hold on a second. That's funk, dude.
What the fuck?
That's funk.
Could you fucking delete that shit?
I hate everything forever, I've decided. I think the world's
Well, no.
fun.
Like, peace and love on planet Earth.
Oh, sorry, right? I forgot.
Yeah, we love the Earth.
Shut that. Die.
Joe's nice jump scare. Dun, 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 dun.
Sorry about that.
I'm thinking about the babies on the conveyor belt. Put in the USB stick. Dun, 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 dun.
Okay, come on. Oh wait, okay, maybe let me try this.
If it doesn't work, you can play a single player game and I'll watch.
Absolutely fucking not. I want to play with you.
Yay. My eyeball is itchy. Oh, Valley Girl. Thank you. Jump scare. Yeah, I love doing a fucking Valley Girl like that. I mean, fucking God.
Oh my god.
Can you fucking believe this shot?
No.
I went to the store the other day to pick up some magnets.
That's a mic. I can disconnect this. That's fine.
I wanted to do an experiment, like in science. Don't know if you've heard about it. Didn't work.
Stacy.
Stacy!
You're just talking about our fucking school project.
I'm talking about fucking science.
Kill you.
Fucking.
I'm gonna kill you, Stacy.
I'm gonna kill you first.
No.
I bought my magnets.
Fool, I've already killed you, Stacy.
What the fuck, Deborah? Deborah. Who the fuck do you think you are? This fucking bullshit happens every single time. Oh, I appear behind you, nothing personnel, kid. Deborah, we're not 11 anymore, we're 12 or better than this. Or we can just say we're 5. Safe bet.
Say that. Deborah. Okay, is the world okay?
No.
Haven't you heard of the yams?
What? Have you fucking heard of the yams? The snow caps?
Which fucking controller is this? I don't. What's going on? It's gonna. Okay, hold on.
The world is a mystery.
Wait. Hold on.
Hold on.
Oh, okay, wait. Wait,
What are you doing?
just some buttons. Okay, wait, so this is
Chat,
one.
stay tuned. We are pressing buttons. Welcome to the button pressing factory.
I think I did it.
I think she did it.
Do you?
No, I tend not to think.
Okay.
Ow!
Oh, fuck, ow.
Oh, Tilda's on my other antler. Yay!
Yay! Okay, hold on. Fitch game.
Oh my god, you did all that shit on your phone. Audience, my beautiful chat, my gorgeous angels. I'm sitting here next to Zoe as she does all this funky shit, and she does it so quickly. She's like pew 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 pew, and then suddenly the whole screen is filled with U-bots and eggs and such.
Yeah. Professor Mothman, thank you very much for the egg.
Should I redeem an egg?
You can if you want to.
I'm going to redeem an egg.
Damn.
It was the eve of the moon festival, but the moon. Fucking go!
Oh my
What
fucking
the
God.
fuck?
Here's the time.
You're in such a fucking hurry, huh?
I'm gonna kill them.
I'm gonna fucking kill them.
I'm gonna
You
teleport
but-
behind them.
No, but
my
nothing
God.
personnel, guys.
It's actually some personnel though.
I also did take it very personally.
Yeah.
I consider it a slight
What was I
on my
gonna
honor. If the what the fuck?
What?
I tried to read the thing and it just ran away from me.
Yeah, the game is made by FromSoft, which is the Dark Souls developers, which is very funny. I feel like there was something else I had to do, but now I will never know.
Did you
Oh,
do the eggs?
no.
Did you do the? Look at us. Kikeriki! De zwarte mina is weer hier.
Yeah.
En wat is het andere dat ze zegt?
Don't remember. God, the music's so good.
Oh, I'm gonna redeem an egg, actually. This is a very big moment for me. I'm going to be redeeming an egg. Drink water now.
Maybe that.
Do we have to what?
We have to dab.
Okay.
But that's kind of hard right now because of the earplug.
Dab.
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 We dabbed.
We dabbed.
You have to take my word for it.
I redeemed an egg.
I feel like that one's better saved for in the middle of game.
Yeah.
Hang on, I can bust it down to this. Fuck yeah, Diesel.
Let's go.
Let's go. Hello, thanks for being raided. Hello, little green fox. Thank you so much for the raid.
What a
Hello.
cute username. Hello.
Ow.
Fucking.
How
Wait.
can you fucking do this to us?
Deborah,
Stay safe.
I won't tolerate this.
We have to take up arms.
We have to
fucking
take up
kill
arms.
them.
We have to defend ourselves. The Senate is lying to us.
You're so fucking right. I've always said this about you.
You could absolutely dab on camera.
I don't wanna.
I don't wanna. Listen, my dab form isn't as sleek as it was back in the olden days when I was a youngin'. When I was young and fresh.
When I wasn't sitting here like in a pretty small space with someone next to me and we're sharing earbuds so there's a cable.
Earbuds that are this fucking close to snapping.
Yeah, that too. They are not okay. But look, Fox, thank you so much to all your
hello.
viewers for the raid. Welcome, welcome. We also have to do a sippy, by the way.
Oh fuck, let me get my water.
Thanks so much.
I'm gonna get a bottle of
Put it in
water.
your fucking thing this time.
Okay. Lekker koffie. Of wat er ook op staat. Lekker bakkie! Ow!
God, I love water. Ghost is dying. The poison damage over time, I think. Rose death impaired by climate change. Is nothing safe?
No, bro! Look at the fucking yams!
Alright, let's see. We are in
where did we left
Arctic
off?
world.
Let me take a sip real quick.
So I haven't even mentioned this on stream yet, but this is the second time we're playing this game. Nice. This is the second time we're streaming this game. The first time was like months ago.
A long time.
Like half a year ago or some shit.
No.
A full year?
It's 57 weeks. Exactly.
How many years is that? 2?
Sarah, awesome. Shut the fuck up. Wait, okay. When did we last play it? We last played. Oh, in November. That's
Oh.
not too long ago.
Have we been? Did we do Music World? I don't remember that. Is it the first one?
I don't remember if I did.
Is that a bonus world or something? Because we started in Jungle World, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wait, maybe this is just... Oh, okay, yeah, it's just... Wait, is it? No, okay, yeah, this is an actual world. I think it's like a bonus world.
Oh, let's go.
You don't want it?
I want to do anything, everything. I want to
Okay.
see the universe and the world. Before climate change ends it all.
Although, thank you for the compliment on the character. It was drawn by us. Also, there's 2 of us. So I don't know which one you mean. But thanks.
They mean you because you're gorgeous. But I will take the
You're
compliment
also
for the art.
gorgeous.
Thank you. I will take the compliment for the art. Thank you.
Yeah. Usually I'm like sort of some fucking 3D
Gorgeous,
character, some
beautiful render, which is handcrafted with. Look at me jump. With so
no,
much.
that's me. You're the other one.
Wait, am I
Are you?
pink?
Oh no. Wait, you're right.
These are our colors. Wait, am I?
Wait, hold on. I think we have to switch controllers then.
Yeah, I need to be yellow.
Yeah, and I need to be pink, of course.
Okay, this is how you jump. This is how you do nothing. This is.
I think that's how you grab things or whatever. I grab the thing. You can double jump.
Oh yeah.
Can you? Yeah, you can.
Yes, I can.
So yeah, if it's your first time watching, if you haven't seen the first one, don't even fucking worry about it. There's not that much of a story to it. It's just sort of good now. Oops, I forgot I was supposed to do things. Dying.
I'm just gonna keep running.
Wow, we did great.
We're so good at this.
We're so good at this.
We're so fucking good. Should we build a voice? How much more can I quote?
Try it. I'm very curious. How many more bits that Chad doesn't know can you quote?
Oh,
Oh, you're
yay.
fine. Careful. Hold on.
Okay.
Come on.
I believe in you.
Good go.
Yes. Yes.
Nice.
Oh, I can do shoes to you.
Shoot.
You can do catchphrases. Shoes to you.
Oh.
Oh, look at me go, combo.
Good. Look at the. Yeah. Can we hit this?
Give me fucking yes.
Nice. Oh, okay. No, I can go up.
We're just so fucking fast, is the thing.
We're awesome
see?
at this. Hi,
Hi,
Chimkin.
Jimkum.
I think
do I need to go down?
Yeah, you have to hit the. I was gonna say bong. That's not what it is.
Do I have to hit the bong?
Hit the bong.
How the fuck do I hit the bong?
I don't know. There you
Oh.
go. Nice job. And then. Oh. Okay. What's this? Help!
The fuck did you
I forgot if you stand too long, stand around too long, a thing comes. But it's time.
Wow, wow, wow.
This game is very noisy. The audio design of this game is insane.
Wow, wow, wow.
Wow, 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 wow. Wow, 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 wow.
Listen.
Wow, 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 wow. Wow, 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 wow. Gotcha, mother. No, stop.
Not sure if you're a
Boy or a girl. Hey, baby, your hair's alright.
This is so fucking cute.
Aw, yay!
That's adorable.
You
Thank you,
turned into a
Fix Me
Lego.
Doll. I was turned into a Lego.
How cute.
Kissing you.
That's sweet. So fun.
Thank you so much.
There's
Well,
been a roadside Lego in the
I have a knife.
Discord.
I do have a knife.
Fuck yeah, dude.
I have many knives.
It's true. You also have a sword, which that is.
I do have a sword, yeah.
Wake up! It's time for eat. David Bowie's classic. Wow, wow. That's his most famous song, I'd say. Okay, it's time, I guess, to take a break. Which feels weird considering that we've only just started the game. But hey, it's already been an hour, so
Has it been an hour?
minus 7 minutes.
Jeez. Okay.
It's been over 50 minutes.
Jesus. Do you
Yeah.
want to go to your E? Should I entertain the chat, or do you want to do a break? This is a break kind of thing.
No. I mean, I can also just use.
I was planning on making some coffee, boiling some water.
Okay, you can make some coffee.
Do you have milk?
No, I've got yogurt.
It's not something you put in coffee traditionally.
No, but it is also a dairy product. So.
It is a dairy product. That is true.
So
So
there. That's, you know.
good talk.
Good
Let's
talk.
shake
Let's
on
shake
it.
on it.
Good job, everybody.
Good job, Chad.
Good job, Chad.
Yeah.
Hey, we did it. Hey,
We did it.
We did it.
Hey.
I'm so proud of us.
Look at us.
Look at us.
Look at us. Who'd have thought?
Not me.
Not me.
What if I make yogurt coffee and drink it live?
Do you want it?
Yeah, if you dare me, I will.
Dare you?
Okay.
That was
Okay,
easy.
say no more. I'm out of here.
Say less right now.
Say less.
All right, Chad. We're gonna take a little break. 20-ish minutes or some shit while I do my estrogel.
I'm gonna make evil coffee.
And it says that. And then she'll drink it on. They'll drink it on speed. It'll be so awesome. Alright, see y'all soon. How do I... Hold on a second, make sure I have to... Alright, okay, good. Alright, see you guys soon. See you soon.
Pipi un kaka, pipi kakaland. Pipiland, kakaland, pipiland, kakaland. Yeah, no, keep the
No, that's not. No, I'll do the video.
Okay, yeah.
Should I do the video of you?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. The what? They are the.
We are the.
It's true.
So we have some Crawford right here.
Hold on. Yeah, reply there. Sure, I misspelled it. Whatever. So doing a little bump.
Sand Eater's Return. Okay.
Sand Eater's Return. Speaking of sand, that's not what this is, but
We currently have made some coffee. And because we found ourselves with a lack of milk on our hands, we have substituted with vanilla yogurt. It is separating in the glass.
Yeah. It looks
I'm going to take a sip. I'm going to hand it to you. And then you're gonna take a sip. And only after we've both taken a sip can we react to the flavors.
Alright, okay.
That are...
Okay.
Okay. Go on. Are you...
So it's
too warm? Okay, good temperature. Okay.
okay, alright.
Disgusting.
So it's not just yogurt, it's vanilla yogurt.
Very sour.
The flavor profile is unpleasant. I will take another sip for your pleasure.
It's really bad. It's extremely sour.
It is disgusting.
Oh, it's really sour!
It's really bad. It definitely, it honestly just tastes like something we shouldn't be taking. You know what I
Tastes
mean?
like poison.
It tastes like poison.
Should maybe throw it out? Or am I at the easy access point for throwing things out?
I'll throw it out.
Okay. Well,
Jesus Christ.
well, we drank it. You dared me, and I drank that shit.
I drank.
I am not a quitter. You joined me. We are powerful and brave, and I don't know why we did this either.
Oh,
Well, but you know what?
A plus, I think 7.
7?
On the numpad,
7.
On the numpad?
I think.
What's 7?
It's good.
7. What did I do?
No, that's not the numpad.
What's the
This
number?
one.
Oh.
It makes a clip.
Oh, yeah.
In case Chad doesn't do it, I want to make sure we can find this moment again.
Okay, but everyone, great news. I have another science experiment.
Yeah,
Because
we-
you know we fucking love science.
We love science of mine.
It is coffee with whipped cream. I found whipped cream in the fridge and I had to.
Which is not as bad, I imagine.
Should I? I'm not gonna mix it. I'm just gonna take a sippy. Okay. Once
I feel
more.
like you should mix it.
I will.
'Cause
I'll just. You can mix it.
All right, okay.
Let's go.
Two Dutch nerds found dead in Ohio next to some real nasty coffee. Nasty. Some real
Nasty coffee. Okay. I took a sip. It's actually quite pleasant.
I don't know if I would say pleasant.
Let me stir it. Let me stir it. Well, compared to what we just drank.
Absolutely, 100%. But I have I can conjure up a water tulpa anytime to cleanse my palate. So I know what water tastes like right now. I've got that on the mind, you know.
Listen, I've tasted worse things.
Yeah, like the coffee just.
More unpleasant sensories have crossed this palate in days past.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, it's alright. It's
alright.
Fucking slam this shit back like it's a shot, bro.
Chug, chug,
Okay,
chug,
1 second. Okay, it's warm. Okay. Now go.
chug, 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 chug. Yo!
Tasty. Oh.
Oh.
Well, tasty.
I'm gonna drink some water.
Woo, spring break! Yeah!
Woo, spring break!
I'm also gonna drink. That fucking yogurt was disgusting. Are we fucking teenagers? Why did we do that?
No, we're adults.
Why is my impulse control that of a safe bet 5-year-old? Tell me.
It's because we like that fun.
We do. You know what? It's always a good time with you. I always have fun with you.
It's with you too.
Which I have played 2 minutes of this game.
If we play no more minutes of this game, I will be satisfied still.
I'm having a delightful time.
Me too.
Audience, chat, we hope you are also having a delightful time.
Yeah.
Full straight spectrum of human emotions.
The despair of the coffee and the pure joy and love of friendship.
We got yogurt coffee. We got friendship.
Those are
got-
the emotions.
We got good coffee. We got
It's alright.
hatred.
I don't know if I would say it was good.
We got hatred. Deborah and
Stacy.
Stacy.
Yeah.
And we got climate change.
That's also an emotion.
The fucking yams.
The yams.
White.
White. Purple.
White and purple.
White and purple.
What else is there to want?
None.
This is exactly what I expected, signed up for, and wanted to. Thank you so much, Banshee Strikes.
I do feel like people who have been like viewers of my channel for a while and have seen any other stream with you know what to
Any
expect.
other? I've seen my name pop up in the chat. Are like, oh, that one.
That's how it's gonna go. Got it.
I see.
I gotta be there for that one.
That's-
You know, like a lot of streams that I do have a lot of whatever at the start.
Yes.
Most streams where I have a co-host
Yes.
have quite a lot of whatever at the start.
With
With you, it's different. You know,
just mostly the whatever.
it's mostly the whatever. Yeah. Ow.
Ow.
This is absolutely what I signed up for with a Rosenzo stream. Trill. The stream topic is a suggestion, but the Immaculate Vibes are a promise.
Just no communication. We just scream. This is why all our TCRPG characters are like that.
Every time we play a TTRPG together, our characters are always just some configuration of us.
Yeah, it's just always.
It is awesome, frankly. Okay, let's see. What is this?
What the fuck? How do I fucking gun?
Gong.
Yeah, that's what I said,
Other
bro.
side. Sorry.
Oh fuck.
How do you zoom in? How do you... Oh, there we go.
Oh, boom.
Oh, I rotate.
A map of my eyes?
But that looks like a map of my eyes. Detective right. It's because I can see myself getting lost in them. That's probably good content, right?
Yeah. I think the girlies at home will really like that.
Yeah.
I got his time and then I died.
Well, I hope it was worth it.
You know,
Do something here?
time is always worth it. Time well spent is never not well spent.
Oh, I got a bell.
Get?
What's that sound?
Oh, should I be on these things? Castañetas. Oh, okay, no, come back.
No.
I'm not doing this.
Damn it.
Okay, so don't be on that thing.
I hope someone clipped their screen because I genuinely spent out. Wow, thank you.
Oh, maybe I can make this jump.
I can simply with this.
Fucking dare me if I can make
Oh, there we go. What am I doing? Oh, okay, got it.
We're fucking gaming, bro.
Gaming.
This is like strategy. I'm in a war zone, babe. Goal,
Me when I'm.
S rank.
I think soldiers should serve more, like
Slay?
like slay.
Yeah,
like
that's
that
what you
kind of
should
serve.
slay more. Like serve
Well,
hunt.
Yeah. And slay enemy soldiers.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. No.
I'm a pacifist, so I think they should
Explode.
explode.
This game does look real darn cute. It's a
I'm
mess.
not gonna make this jump.
I love this game. It's bullshit. Oh wait, I have to help you. Do I?
No, you were at the right place, I think.
Can I? Oh, okay.
No! Kill your
Ah, fuck.
kill,
Don't say
kill
that.
me. No!
You can't say that on the internet.
Ah!
It's only a pacifist. Pacifist through your face. Hey,
Ah!
good. I'm using
That's
that.
fucking good as fuck.
Thank you. That rules.
Yay! Woohoo!
Can I boah? Do you have to boah?
Boah, bro. Oh, okay, wait.
I think I have to boah.
No, I have to pull. You boah. I will pull on the lever.
Oh.
Wait, I had you, bro.
Boah.
Oh, gorgeous. It's like music to my ears. Let me take a little drummy.
Do you have to do anything?
Oh, let me toot. How do you...
Yeah, give us a toot.
Let me toot.
Yeah, you'll see like that change if you can interact with something. I think you have to like stand in the middle of that music on the platform. No, the thing. Oh, I'm being attacked.
I have to stand on this last button. I can tell. I feel it. No, kom,
I don't think so. I think...
kom hier. Ik zweer het je. Kom hier.
Godverdomme zeg.
We did it.
We're
We
so
won.
good at this.
We're so good at
We're so
this.
good at this.
And you know what? I believe in us.
Hey Chad, we're awesome.
We're so good.
We're so awesome.
I believe in us, and I think we're really good.
Soldiers should wear Louboutins and
Balenciaga and have whoop tattoos, babe. You fucking said it.
Amazing.
You're saying the words, and I am hearing them with my ears.
Surreal. All right, I have to do the thing.
Do a bois.
The UI makes every level look like
Can
one
I
of those
fucking-
demos of Playboy
can I
Platform.
live?
It fucking does. You can do it.
Can I live?
You can do it.
Okay.
You're living.
I'm living! I'm living! Okay. I'm going to kill this thing.
Jump on it. You're amazing. I don't know. I fucking bad at you. So see if you can do a thing here, because I feel like you can, maybe? No? Why can't I do a thing then? What's the point?
I don't know.
Oh, whatever.
Maybe just for the joy, the simple joy of
Try it.
existing.
So try like standing right there.
Okay.
And then facing the thing. Okay, no, go back, and then... Because I saw something pop out. Oh, there. Oh, you have to do it in the air?
But what? How do I do that?
I
I'll
don't
just double
fucking
jump.
know.
I'll just fucking.
I'm being attacked and killed.
I'll just try and do something for you. How the fuck does this work?
Okay, so... You jump, and then in the air you press the interact button. Huh?
This is the interact button, right?
I think so.
I'm pressing every possible button. Okay, double jump.
Huh?
These buttons are pressable. Let me press them. Okay. Okay, I believe in myself. I have to do a C.
Try interacting with the chicken thing. I think it'll give us a hint.
Hi, you stupid idiot. Next up is a trumpet. I used to play the instrument all the time when I was young. Thank you!
That doesn't help us!
Thank you, you fucking chicken!
God!
Get tired.
What,
Makes every level look like one of those demons.
Is that liquid?
Oh no!
Wait, can we continue from that? Oh, okay, we can.
Okay, good. I wouldn't have cared.
No, we'll just go back to the normal.
This is so us.
This is a bonus stage. Who gives a shit? The trumpets, blah. Well, apparently not blah is the thing about it.
Is the thing, you see.
Thanks, Hintmeister. Dipshit. Hintmeister Dipshit is my new D&D villain. Yeah, Tom Boyle.
Final one!
So good at this.
Gaming. I killed him! Yeah!
Piano.
The piano. Okay, show me how you do it. How come... Oh, wait!
My thing is on the floor.
Maybe this thing can go up. This thing that I'm standing on. Wait, blow it. No.
Oh,
Can I pull the trumpet? The drum. Oh, maybe the thing. Kom hier. Kom hier. Nee. Staat er hier misschien een ding? Oh, een bel! Kom hier!
no, that's an enemy.
Oh. Die. Well, let's see if
You have
there's...
to be able to do something to help me out.
Yes. Don't kill me. Where's something that I can stand on?
What is this buzzy shit? What's going on?
That is me being killed.
Is it your controller?
Yeah.
Oh, so it is. Okay.
I'm
alright.
trying to get out, and he just keeps hitting me. Listen. The thing is,
What just happened?
I'm really good at video games.
Should we just go up to the normal level?
Yeah, we should go to the normal.
This is not it. This is
But
not.
this is it.
This is fucking
This
it,
is
dude.
fucking it, dude.
We do this every day.
Every single day, I'm spitting in the air,
I'm making you do that, and I'm
and no matter how much I want to stop, you are making me do that. You are so good at it. Look at me playing the banjo. Look at you doing a little jig.
a little strut.
I think we're kind of like Boots, the house down, servants down.
Yeah, kind of something.
Charlie XCX next my way.
Wait, I think I remember this. I think we're just got really frustrated at this level and then just quit.
Oh yeah, we did it!
Yeah, right?
Oh my
Good,
god,
fun
you know what?
times.
This is gonna be great.
Do I also have to do that? Oh no.
Oh, yeah, that was the thing.
Wait, you do that on my end and nothing.
Yeah, we have to do that at the same time so that you can, I think, hop in.
Oh.
Wait, let me show you. Let me show you. I will actually fucking show you. I'm them-splaining.
So I have to go over here.
Yeah, you have to stand in it. Just stand. Be like, oh, you're there. You did it. No, wait, I'm gonna launch you. Gun!
Whee! How fun. There's penguins. They're dead.
Does the grab button still work?
Just like COVID change.
Just like fucking did you have the fucking answer?
Oh, they're at the ends. I hear their screams of agony.
There we go.
There we go.
There we go.
Oh yeah, and if you keep doing it, then the things on the side also come along. Okay, alright, cool. And then... You're so good at saying swears.
What did we say?
the fuck are you talking
did I say
about?
swear? I never swear. I am a very good Christian
Snowman.
snowman. Let me into this house. I
also
will go
come-
into your house.
Fuck, come on. There we go. Thank you. Oh, there's nothing in here. That's awesome.
Hello, big thing.
Do I ever do anything to help you? Like,
Yeah, you have to help me right now. Get rid of this, or I'm gonna grab it.
oh, okay.
Get her.
I
Pull her out of her natural habitat.
Get away. Stop climate change.
Stop climate change.
Change the climate.
It is her responsibility. She did this. When will we ever be reunited? Are we destined to always be apart?
I think it's only during some boss fights or something. I mean, the whole point of the game is that we are like in different parts, but I am so sad.
I want to be best friends.
We are.
We are best friends.
We are
I mean,
best
like
friends.
next to each other.
That would also be nice.
Kom hier, ik zweer het je. Kom hier. Ja, goed zo. Doe een sprongie. Springetje en dan op die muur.
Nope.
Cool. Ja, poep.
Oh,
Hey,
wait.
waag het eens. Kom hier. Kutvis.
There's a thing here, apparently.
Oh, what if I launch you up? Okay.
There's a
okay.
thing you can pull. That thing.
Oh yay.
Oh, wait, I know what to do. Wait, okay, you jump on that first, so it's flat.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Then you pull it, and then you get it past the block, and then I make the
see.
block rise so that it can.
Eyewitness.
There we go, we're smart.
Oké, strategie, baby.
Ah, stratego, dat wordt het
Stratego.
wel.
Ik ben er heel slecht in. Kan ik helemaal niks van.
Here, I will help you. Whoa, fuck!
Thank you. Was that supposed? No.
Ah, sorry, okay, try again. I will catch you this
Okay,
time.
you can do it.
You're so right, Maxwell. This game is an extended metaphor for the disconnected technologies introduced into our daily lives.
And also something.
And also something about the gamer game. It's so good.
Listen. No. Listen, we're just so fucking. What if we played this game for like maybe half an hour? The rest of this thing is just us drinking bad coffee.
There's an entire stream where you just drink bad coffee the whole time.
Yeah. That's what was our podcast called? Did you hear about the yams?
Yamcast.
Yamcast. Geef me die paal.
Other way. Yeah, there you go.
Het staat als een paal boven waar. Hey, sorry. Hoe noem je een vis op de stoep?
Dood, waarschijnlijk.
Een lantaarnpaling. Ja, die is leuk. Ja, die is ook leuk.
That's funny. That's good. Fuck. I hate these birds.
Kill them.
Maybe. No, I'm not gonna say that.
What?
I was gonna say. No!
We're doing really well, I think.
We're so good at having fun.
You know that I'm doing great when I start randomly switching to Dutch.
There's a fish on here.
Get me, get.
Jump above. What am I doing? I thought it was pulling that board.
Pudding.
What's happening to me? What the fuck? Thank you.
This stupid
You should
fucking
jump a
fish.
bunch or something.
I've been jumping. Ah, there we go. Daar gaan wij. Good kid.
Have you ever seen the movie Our Drawings? A Princess?
Yes, not fully.
Oh.
You've shown me beatboxing puppy.
Yeah, we should watch it sometimes.
We should fucking watch it today.
No, we're gonna watch Trolltop musical.
I'm leaving.
Wait for me.
Okay.
I have to help you really good this time.
Okay.
Okay, go.
Are you ready?
Yeah!
You're so
nice.
fucking good at video games.
You too.
Look at us.
Couldn't have done it without you. This big penguin is totally over here.
I like that guy just leaves you alone.
Yeah, it's nice. Okay, pull this wedge.
Is there something I can do?
There we go. No, you just have to wait for me. I think, at least for now. There we go.
Yes. Yes. How to defuse an argument. Beatboxing puppy.
Beatboxing puppy.
What does he do again? Besides beatbox. S
Oh,
rank!
that's just it. He just dances and beatboxes.
S
We're
rank.
so good at
babe.
this.
Look at us with the S right now!
I do that every day.
Every single fucking day,
Every
bro.
single goddamn fucking day.
I have a picture of me and Nick in your. You are standing at your computer, and Nick is lifting me in the air over his shoulder, and I am hanging limp, like a fucking sack of potatoes. Every single time I sit here. No! I think about that picture. We have 30 seconds to spare. The time is gone.
That is not a lot of time, I gotta be
It's
honest.
fine.
I mean, it'll be fine, it's just not a lot of time.
What the fuck do you mean the time is up?
What? How did it happen?
Oh, maybe I lost a lot of points.
No, that's not
dying
possible.
to rings.
Oh, you did actually do it, it looks like it.
And I
I fell in
died.
the water.
I also. Oh. You know what? We're both really good at video.
We're equally good, which means we're the best.
Which means we're bad.
No.
Two positives make a positive.
Really positive. Two positives
Lamp.
makes an opposite.
Shut the fuck! I can't fucking out that you would watch
Beautiful
the end of this.
creature.
I can't look at the beautiful creature. I have to get us some extra time. Okay, beautiful
job.
creature.
Okay,
I see.
okay.
Oh, it is like. Okay, gorgeous. Oh, stunning. Stunning!
Damn it, what happened?
You know, sometimes life just throws you some curveballs, right?
It's true.
No! How
Anyway,
how tall are these men?
You have to wait for me to get the things out of the way first.
Oh, I already.
Well, yeah, but in the future.
Yes.
You know, assuming we would have to restart, we don't.
We don't because we're really good at it.
We're really good. Anyway, we should
I wanna.
watch.
I can't fucking. Oh, beautiful.
You have to do that because you have to knock into the thing to get the walrus to come out of the water. I think you're supposed to knock into that thing. I assume.
Oh, but it costs us time. $3 puppy.
Fucking puppy. We should definitely watch that movie sometime because it's a beautiful mess.
I watched.
And that is like derogatory still.
Okay. Okay, let's get us some time. Let's get us some time.
Nice job. Beatboxing puppy.
What's
There's
this
a
guy?
bear.
Is he gonna get me?
Oh god, he's gonna get you.
He's
Scared.
gonna fucking get me. He's gonna
Look at
fucking
this.
get
Come
me.
on. Oh well.
We don't need to help each other right now. And I could just run past that bear. This doesn't feel. He's gonna follow me, isn't he?
Oh god, do you think? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I've seen him. I know what to do when a bear follows me. I've played 5 Nights at Freddy's. I sit there and I scream.
Then I go.
Oh my god! Yay! No!
No! Taliki, why?
Taliki! Oh, she's back.
Yay, Taliki!
You're back. No!
I love how like 40% of the time when you're on my stream, we do end up mentioning PGRPG characters.
Yeah.
Okay, what the fuck is this?
This is a little funny puzzle.
Okay, see?
Okay, here we go.
Do you want a straight line?
I'm never straight, you know this.
Oh, we got so much time.
Look at us
Look
go.
at us fucking go.
That's actually amazing.
S.
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 Watch it.
S.
That's what it says, bitch.
The B for
That
S.
says S.
Tetherpeg!
Tetherpeg.
Tetherpeg
I
is
like to
cute.
pronounce TTRPG as Tetherpeg.
You can't say
cute.
TTRPG without the R. Stands for Rose. Oh! Tabletop Rose playing games.
Who's playing games?
I am playing games.
You're playing games.
You know what I like about the way my name looks in English? It looks very they them.
I can see it.
ROOS is a
Yeah.
very they them name.
Fuck. Okay.
Not in Dutch. But... Shut the fuck up.
Die forever, stupid bird.
Die forever. Excellent. I went full self-destruct.
Ah, good. You and me both. You know, and if we both die, then, you know, it's kind of like we didn't lose any time at all.
Yeah.
No! It's okay. Because I just got some time.
Okay.
I think we're gonna make it.
Yeah, I really think we're just gonna do this.
Oh, fish! The fish is scaredy. And I died.
No, you're totally fine. I'm gonna get us some time.
Yeah.
Let me fucking get us some time. Let me fucking get. We did it.
We did do it,
The
though.
thing is, you win by friendship.
That's true. And there's no more friendship than us.
She do be speaking facts. Oh my god, look at us.
Look at us go.
Okay. Why are we so fucking good at video games? That was a flawless execution.
Our friendship and experience.
And also failing a lot of time.
No, it's okay. What is this thing? Oh, a little bug. Get a little bug. We're gonna go.
Oh my god!
Woo!
Okay, wait, I have to do this.
How do we do it? Okay.
Oh,
Okay, we
wait.
rotate the
Okay.
thing. We rotate the thing. Okay,
see.
hold on. Okay, and then go. No, wait. Oh, back. Okay. Shit. Wait. Okay, yeah. And then. No, wait. And then,
Forward, backwards.
backwards.
Get the money. Get the
gold,
money.
get the
Get the
gold,
gold. Get the gold.
Okay, you rotate us. Okay, wait, okay. No, we go all the way. No.
All the way.
Yeah.
Okay, wait.
Go, go, go.
Forward. Forward.
Okay, I do it. No.
Let's Olympic action. Let's Olympic Look at us go. We're doing it. Look at us.
Get the
Oh,
time.
money.
Who'd have thought?
Not me.
Not me.
Okay.
Okay, go, go. No, wait.
Get this thing out of my face! Let's get the time at least. Yeah.
While we're here.
Okay, wait. Okay.
Okay.
And now at the same time.
Shit.
Just full confidence. Okay. Full confidence.
Okay. Wait. We've got plenty of time.
We've got all the time in the world if this fucking shrimp will get out of the way. Oh my god. Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm just gonna keep going.
Okay. Yeah. No, wait. Turn around. Okay.
Okay.
Get out of the way, shrimp.
Get out of the way, shrimp.
Get out of the way.
Get out of the way, shrimp. Okay.
Okay, rotate
Let
a
me
little.
get that time. I want to
Rotate a little bit. There we go. Okay, and then.
Okay. Wait.
And
I figured it out.
Okay, wait,
I
wait.
figured it out.
Backwards. Okay.
Forward.
Let's go.
Okay, forward.
Let's go.
Forwards is like this.
And then you rotate, and then we both go, and I go the other way, the
and
right
we
way.
forward.
Okay, and then I do a rotate. You don't do anything for a second, and then we go.
And then we go.
Yeah.
We fucking go. We figured it out. Okay, wait. Let me take it steer. The other way. Other way. Yippee!
Okay, wait. Okay. Yes.
Yes.
No, not this way. Other way where there's time.
Yes, the time. Yes, let's get the time.
Let's get the time.
Yeah, I got
Yes,
the time.
okay.
Okay, nice. We're so good at this.
I keep getting fucked up. Left like this.
Yeah, it's really
To the
hard.
left. To the left. Everything you want in a box to the left.
It's really hard.
But now we're doing it.
We're fucking doing it.
Fucking let's go! It's a kayak.
Yes, the goal. The goal.
Okay, and now we just turn, and we don't. Okay.
And we go. And we rotate. You rotate us.
And I wrote it as.
And we
yes!
go.
Yes! Woo! Yes, rank!
S rank. We're amazing.
So fucking good.
No one's doing it like us.
No one is fucking doing it like us. You know what?
No
I
one
think
is dares to do it like us. You're fucking
this is
scared.
super
You're fucking
brave.
scared.
But we are brave enough.
We're brave enough.
We're brave enough.
We're brave enough.
I think this deserves another coffee with some yogurt in it. So good at this because Rose is Rose.
It's
so
true.
fucking-
Fixing climate change one bad coffee at a time. That's what we do here at the Yamcast.
Yeah, that's what we're here at Yamcast.
Here at Yamcast.
We fix climate change one coffee filled with yogurt at a time. What the fuck are we talking about?
Everything.
Oh my god! Okay, to the left, 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 to the left. No, you have to go to the right.
Oh shit.
Okay, wait. Let me steer. Okay. Okay, I think you have to go to the right, and I have to turn to the left.
Okay, so right. What is it? Clockwise or counterclockwise?
Okay, so if I do this, I go forward. So
Okay.
maybe if you go like
If I do that,
this.
we go backwards.
Okay. Okay, okay.
Wait, hold on.
Okay.
Is it, okay, yeah, alright, and then we go. No, wait.
Okay.
Rotate.
To the back.
Alright, okay, yes.
Okay, okay, okay. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Now we
Okay,
turn a
rotate
little
us.
bit.
Uh-huh.
Turn a little bit. Turn a little bit. Okay.
And then we go. Nope. Keep turning.
A little bit.
Keep turning.
Okay.
We turn over.
A little bit. Turn a little bit.
Okay, turn a little bit. Turn a little bit. Okay, I go.
Okay. And turn a little bit. Turn a little bit. When we got in the kayak, I didn't expect this. Yeah. Okay.
Turn a little bit.
Turn a little bit. Backwards action. Okay, I got it.
Keep turning a little bit.
Turn a little bit. Turn a little bit. Turn a little bit. Turn a little bit. Got it. Turn a
And
little
let's go. Wait, other way.
forward. We're stuck.
Turn a little bit.
Turn a little bit.
And go.
Backwards.
Turn a little bit.
Turn a little bit.
Oh my god.
This game is incredible. This game is so fucking fun. Oh, turn a little bit. We're gonna make a clip.
just tried to fucking solve it. Oh my
Bird vlogs.
This is no bird vlogs. This is just like real kayaking from my experience.
I
That's
do
so
actually.
true.
It's true. I went kayaking
Yeah.
in the grachten.
Oh, nice. The canals.
The canals of Utrecht. And we just like bumped into the sides, just dung 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 like
Yeah.
a pinball.
I've done a lot of kayaking in France, so yeah, I can confirm. Use of Adagio, Taringerine. What's going on with the mouse? That's weird.
Oh, maybe that's why we're not doing well.
Yeah, it's probably relevant. I don't know, what's it happening? Huh. What's it happening?
That's unsexy.
My mouse is moving on its own. It's not very cool of it.
It's a ghost.
Damn it. Not again. Just some trans girl.
Hello.
No one is just some trans girl. How dare you?
Every trans girl is exceptional.
It's true. Thank you for the eggs. Okay, fuck. This is... What the fuck? Wait, is it one of our controllers that's doing that?
I thought it might, so I didn't touch nothing.
Yeah, it was yours.
What?
Okay.
What? But I wasn't touching it.
I think that was the problem.
Oh,
It wasn't you. You didn't do anything
maybe
wrong.
maybe I should
you
be
were
a better
special and
gamer.
perfect.
But thank you. But you know what we should do in the future?
Turn it a
So a
little
little
bit.
bit.
Turn it a little bit.
Okay, wait. So, okay, let's do this. So if I turn this way, my paddle goes forward. If
Okay.
I turn this way, I sail backward. What about you?
If I go this way, we go backwards. If I go
Okay.
this way, we go
so
forwards.
I have to go counterclockwise. You have to go clockwise.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so steady, steady,
Okay.
and
Ja, daar gaan we.
3, 2,
Twee,
1,
één.
go!
Gaan!
Gaan! In het
praten.
Nederlands. Ah, kut, dat
Oké.
zie ik nog net niet, hè?
Ja, ja, oké, oké.
En door!
En door, en dan een beetje draaien.
Een beetje
Beetje draaien, draai een beetje. Draai een beetje.
Andere kant, andere
Ja, andere kant, een beetje draaien.
Oh, we zijn maar goed, we zijn maar goed!
Oh,
Gaan
we
uit,
doen
pakken
het,
tijd!
we doen het.
Oh,
There
nee,
we go.
dat is water,
Okay.
dat is water,
Alright.
dat is water, dat is een beetje water.
Oh,
Dat vind ik niet leuk!
Oh my god, we're like fucking dying.
Ja, we-
Oh, you restarted the start. That sucks. That
Oké, wait,
sucks.
wacht, oké. Counterclockwise. Ja, nu ben ik Nederlands aan het praten, nu kan ik niet meer anders.
No, you have to stop.
No!
The audience won't understand what you're saying. You have to
Oh,
snap out
that's
of it.
The accident was years ago.
The touch don't exist anymore.
The touch. No! Stop going into the water!
Oh, this is evil.
Okay, okay.
So rotate, let's rotate a little bit. Just turn a little bit. Turn a little bit.
Yes, okay.
Turn a little bit. Turn a little bit. Nope. 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 Okay. No, wait, other way.
Other way, other way,
Yes, okay,
other way,
right,
okay.
sure.
And turn a little bit.
And there we go.
Okay, okay. Okay, and now we go to the left. We're gonna steer. We're gonna teach ourselves how to steer. Okay. En naar voren, en naar voren.
Okay, come on.
Okay.
I did not miss the uwu. I'm sorry. It was just too much to to try to do that and talk Dutch and play the
Forward,
game.
forward. This fucking ice. Okay. Forward.
Forward.
Backward.
This fucks me up because this eyes looks like the other eyes in the previous stage that we could break.
Yeah, this is bad game design. Cookies and cream.
Yeah, Cookie and Adventures of Cookie and Cream. What do you mean, timeline?
It's like TF2. The Netherlands is now under. Okay, we can do this. So let's figure out how we steer. So forward, you go clockwise, I go counterclockwise,
Yes.
right? So when we want to steer, when we want to go left, for example. Okay, wait, sorry, use that example. You stop and then I go.
Yes.
So okay, wait. What about you? Okay, you keep going, and now I will. Yes.
Okay.
And now I go counterclockwise. You go clockwise.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Now you stop.
And you go.
No, sorry.
Like, if we do it right, we never have to rotate
Okay.
the other way. We can just keep going. You can counterclockwise. I can.
Sorry, I fuck up. I
fool.
fuck up.
It's all right. Okay, you do it for a little bit.
Okay. Okay, and now I go counterclockwise.
Okay.
And now you stop.
Uh-huh.
Now you go.
And I go.
And now I stop.
And you go.
Now I go.
No, stop, 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 stop. No!
Oh, we did it.
We're getting there.
We're getting
We're
there.
getting there.
Wait, this is unfair. Okay, and
pretty
counterclockwise. Sorry, that's from
That's all right.
back.
Okay, okay.
We're figuring it out though.
We're doing it, we're doing it, we're doing it, we're doing it. No, okay, wait. Why are you stopping? Don't stop.
Back. I have to just look at the controller and not at the screen.
Okay, so stop. Okay. And join in, go. Counterclockwise.
Counterclockwise.
No. Okay, no. Okay, keep going.
Okay.
Just keep going, just keep going.
Just keep going. Just
Okay.
keep going. Just keep going.
Now stop.
No.
Go.
Go. Now you stop. Counterclockwise.
No. Fuck,
What?
it cries, bro. We're
Okay.
getting it.
Okay, I stop.
Go.
I join it. Now you stop.
Uh-huh.
Now you join it.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Now we stop.
Stop.
Now we join it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
Okay.
Stop.
Stop.
Go.
Now we join it. Now
I
we
stop. Join in.
Okay. Yeah! The second we figured it out, we stop! Oh my god.
Okay, we have to balance on it. Yeah, okay. Oh my god. What does it do? What does it do? It does that, I guess. Alright, whatever.
That's
Does it matter? I don't know.
yippee!
What?
Oh wait.
You try pushing the button and seeing if something happens. No, the button. Huh? Can you push it? Oh, I think you push it. You push it.
I see.
You put the block. The block.
Ah.
Yes. But you push for both of us. We push the block together. So I'm
Okay.
going to push it up here.
Now I'm going to push it
That way. That way.
that way. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, because there's a wall here. So
I see.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
And then I can push it here. And then we do that several times to make it pitch, I think.
Okay, I
Or
see.
maybe we can just make it jump.
Can we
We can make it. We can make it.
What's this? Oh, it's a puzzle piece.
Yeah, it's very...
Ah!
Ah, dang it.
Well, you know what?
You can do it. You can do it. Well,
Well,
you know.
this game was designed to make people less fun. No, because
No,
we figured it out.
Because we figured it out. No, we love
3,
teamwork.
2.
Okay, go.
Okay,
Okay, wait. You stop.
I stop.
We love teamwork more than ever now because we're defeating the game. You know, we're overcoming challenges and whatever. Stop. Oh, I stopped. Right, you're right.
Now you join.
Stop a little more. You go.
You stop.
You stop.
You join. No, stop.
Go, 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 go. No! Why did you stop?
Because I thought like maybe.
No. There you go. No, wait. Stop. No, we had it.
We have it. We still have it.
Okay, we.
The yogurt.
It was bad, but at least it was short.
At least we knew what we were signing ourselves up for. I never signed up to kayak. It's fucking fence. It's offensive.
Okay, go. Stop. Okay. Stop. No, wait, I stop. You go. You stay. I go. Okay, go. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Just keep going.
Just keep going. Okay, now I stop.
Huh?
Now I
And
stop.
then stop. And then we go. Yes. 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 Okay. Okay. Dude, we've got over 100 seconds. We can tell you
so
do
good
this.
at this.
We're so good at this.
Okay. Okay, balance. Chuck.
That's not the jump button.
It's not the jump button.
Okay.
Okay. Now we know what to do.
Yes.
Okay. Push it here.
Yes. And I push.
Oh, sorry. Okay, that's how you reset them.
Yes. Oh. That's okay. That's okay. It's actually better.
Oh, perfect.
Nope, it's not.
not.
Reset.
We're learning. We're learning every time.
We're learning every day.
Okay, and don't too far. Not too far. Just one. Now I do it like this.
Yes. Yes. And now we just make a jump over. Oh, nice, nice.
Give me the gold.
Yes, let's do it. Okay, good, good. Okay, I have to do a thing here. This time.
Do I not? Okay, I see.
Oh, wait.
Do I not have to turn these? Oh, gorgeous.
I don't know. I'm going to...
Oh, I have to be on
It's a
the.
drill. Go. Go. Can I keep going? No, I guess not. Okay. Yes.
Who would have thought?
We're so good on time. We're at
So
being
fucking good on
chat.
time. We're even better at fucking time now.
We're the best on time.
Yeah. And we're always punctual. Okay, look at.
Look at us.
I'm just gonna fucking saunter.
We're so good at this.
So fucking.
Let's see that S rank.
Let's see that fucking S rank. It's D for the best.
For the best,
The
which is
fucking
S.
best S.
The best.
S rank incoming.
Yeah, S rank. Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's just one of my favorite things about streaming. It's like when Chet like anticipates the recurring bits.
bit, yeah.
Yeah. It's so good. I love you guys.
I also love you guys. I'm not on very often, but I do love you guys. Look at us.
Woo!
Look at how comfortable. Okay.
Thing, but
Ass. The pigs are out. No!
oh no, I've disappeared. So have you. Okay, good. We've escaped the thing.
Whatever this ass was.
Me during the ending of John Carpenter's The Thing. I've never watched it. I assume we escape it.
It's like I'm there. Oh, that's so cute.
Sub-Zero Beast.
Polar Teddy.
I forgot about this thing. It looks cute, but kind of weird.
It's a
I think it's Haga.
This is kind of high.
Yeah. Oh.
Hana would
I
never
wanna think.
do this.
I want to think. I'm playing Pong. Go play Pong. Yes, play Pong with him. Okay, we have to make this hit him or something.
Yes, I think. Oh, okay.
Hit him. Oh, we did it. Okay, yes, that works. That works.
These fucking dickwad penguins.
Throw a rock. Yes. Oh, he's throwing the platform that he's on, so the more we destroy, the less he'll be able to stand on it.
Play Pong. Yes!
Come on, motherfucker.
What the fuck?
No, what the hell?
But it was supposed to get it.
Die.
Die. Stupid cringer.
You should be destroyed.
Oh, gold. Oh, come here. Tijd. Ik zweer het jou.
Bitch, like jumping over it.
Don't allow him to. I will never.
Bounce.
What the
Oh,
fuck?
You have to like stay still as it's landing on you.
Okay. We're learning.
We're learning.
You know?
There you go. Okay.
We're learning and growing. Kom hier! Ik zweer het je! I mean, I swear. I mean,
I think it's fine to say like small little Dutch.
yes!
Phrases like-
Look at it! What the?
Oh, okay, yeah, that somehow worked because it was so slow that he just landed on it again. Okay, come on, motherfucker.
Let's get him. Get him! Just one go. One hit
Come on,
wonder.
come on. Damn it,
hit
you
wonder.
jumped over it. How do we make it not do
I
that?
hate that he's nimble. Don't jump.
How dare
Stupid
you?
idiot.
How dare you be nimble?
What? I hit it. This game is great. What the? Ah!
What?
Oh yeah. Oh, time! I'm fond of time.
Me too.
Me when I'm mortal.
Like when I have more of it. This game seems like it rules, in a sense.
Well, it rules my heart.
Okay, yeah, nice. That's just the way to do it, I guess. Just make him jump on it again, make it go so slow.
But where did the thing go?
What thing?
It should disappear now, right? Shouldn't it? Oh, there we go. Oh, okay.
Bounces. Aww. There we go.
There we go. That was a
That was a
quick
good
hit.
one. That was a good one. Speedrun strats.
Speed more strats.
Everything has been intended up to this point. Oh. Oh, okay, nice.
Oh.
Yeah!
What's gonna happen?
Woo!
That was very much an S rank performance. I feel like.
Yeah, as
As
the
is
screen-
evidenced by the screen.
Yeah. This is. Yeah, they fucking died.
You drowned a bear. Good
I
job.
don't know if it was a bear, but we drowned it.
Did they not escape the thing? I've actually also never seen the thing.
I think they'll die.
Do they? Does the thing die?
Well, I think it like freezes in the cold fucking snow. Like I think the end of it is like they just die to the cold. Everything just dies to the cold.
It's a magical world.
Magical world. Where the world is magical.
Boss, you killed a bear. Amazing.
That's why you're the best.
D for drowned him.
D for drowned him, S rank. That was what it said.
Good.
Because we did get S rank,
We did get S
as we
rank.
all know.
S is evident to the S rank.
Theme park time.
Fucking jeez.
I gotta be honest.
Okay,
This
be
theme
honest.
park, not as good as the S rank. You know?
Only producer were here.
If only producer here.
But he's not.
He's not, so it's not as good.
What the fuck?
There's a clown. Look at this clown that's trying to get me. How is it supposed to... What? Hold on,
Am
what
I
about
missing
this?
something?
What about this button? Look to this clown.
Thank
This
you.
clown's murdering me.
Oh, maybe this thing is jumping.
Oh, here we go. Okay, wait.
Oh, I see.
That's still pretty hard, huh?
Let me try. Oh.
Side note, killing polar bears? What do you think you are? Climate change?
Yes.
Yeah, when is this game gonna have an Efteling world, honestly, though?
Honestly.
We should play some Efteling games together.
Do they
There's a couple.
exist?
There's basically like a Roller Coaster Tycoon ripoff that's not very good. And there's a point-and-click adventure game that still includes
Oh, I see.
the former Sirocco, so that's gonna be something we have to be very aware of. Get on there, quick!
Little bat is eating
Okay,
my-
get in. Okay, good.
Get him off of me!
Jump a bunch. Spam jump. Damn, that's not working.
Listen, it's fine. I'll just
Okay,
leave
good,
time.
good. Careful of the
And I'll
clown.
kill this clown.
Yes, good. You will never be produced, motherfucker.
You fucking wish you had his swag. His fucking jester swag, no one could handle.
So
What do
good.
I do to help?
Pull nothing.
Ah, I see. Come here. Come here.
Can I?
Yeah, break a window. Hell yeah. This
I
is.
feel like I was rapid firing a moment ago. I don't know.
These are not killable clowns. That's the two genders of clown. You have killable clowns and not killable. Oh my
true.
god!
Aww.
I want to be on the thing, whatever this. I want to be on the hamster!
That is like a little chipmunk!
Yay!
Oh, that's fast. Oh my god.
Jesus fucking
oh
Christ!
shit!
I want to get off!
Oh my god!
I don't want to get off! Okay, wait. Ow. What the fuck am I supposed to...
We're about to have a battle.
Oh, we're just having too good a time. That was delightful.
That was fun. This was fun.
Okay, let's see. What do we do? Okay, so we have to play the Sirocco game. The previous Sirocco game.
I think it would be fun if we did. Because it's a little point and cookie ranger game where you help produce.
Oh, I wanna help
It's
my
like
boy.
it's like the kind of like older produce.
Oh, the kind of nasty looking one, the one where he looks like a laugh.
Yes.
I love him.
Jump. Jump, jump.
It's not gonna help.
I think it does. Eventually, or maybe just to make enough progress or something. I don't know.
I think it just stops after a couple of seconds.
I don't think.
Stupid fucking clown.
We'll never
Dickhead.
go through this.
Yeah.
Come on, stay singing.
Deborah, don't fucking tell me what to do.
Say anything.
You're fucking saying enough with your silence.
That's what I'm saying.
No is a whole sentence and silence is a response. Yippee. Should I be in the middle actually?
Maybe. Can you be? Oh.
Wait, let me get on the hamster real quick. Okay, time for joyful. What the fuck are we supposed to do?
I don't know.
This is what we're supposed to do.
You're supposed to be having fun.
Oh, there's the bat. You can't
Oh,
catch
God.
up to me. Yeah.
I killed the bat. You can't. Oh my god, that's so good. I killed mine and you just can't. catch
Go
up.
on.
That's funny.
But what are we supposed to do actually?
I don't know.
Oh. The Joker be like.
Whoever did the bat. Oh, wait.
Oh, I have to. I think I have to be on top of one. Oh, you have to stop it and then I have to jump over, maybe?
I don't know.
I just want to be having a time.
Yeah, let's slow it back down.
Okay.
It stopped. I made it stop.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
This is such a Dreamcast game, even if it's a PS2 game. Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. If you just showed me this and asked me what console it was and I didn't know, I would absolutely say Dreamcast. That's where Sonic's from.
Oh my god.
Not originally, but where modern Sonic is from. Strong comfort me the moment I started messing with you little asshole. Nice! You killed it.
That's the dream of every
There's stairs on the other side. There are there stairs? I'll look at that in a moment.
Fucking Jesus Christ! Just leave me alone for 1 second. You
Oh
stupid
my god!
sucking fool,
That
idiot.
sucks if you had to wait for me. That's
Well,
so rude.
it's always the fault of the bat. We hate the fucking bat. Yeah, me when I'm the fucking Joker.
Me when I'm Batman's rogues gallery just in general.
Me when I'm many of the Robins also.
Yeah, that's true.
He's not. Okay, wait. Okay, you have to stop it, and then I climb up on top of a chipmunk, and then I can jump over. If I'm in this one. Ah! Oh, I got us a bunch of time. No, I didn't.
No, that was the other thing. Puzzle piece.
Okay, can I
Okay, so
jump over? No.
you have to
What
do
the fuck
something
am I
with
supposed to
this
do?
thing. There are stairs on the other side. How the fuck are you supposed to get those?
Am I not supposed to just jump over?
This is like a claw thing, so
Let me try and see if I can get up. Okay, we can figure this out. I believe in our superior strategy skills. Yes, okay, I'm at the highest vantage point.
okay, I'll make it real slow.
Okay.
Great job.
Thank you.
What the fuck are we supposed to do? This game did get a DS port, yes, which I completely forgot about until someone told me. yesterday or some other day.
Is this thing gonna be jump higher?
This carousel's gonna make me have a fucking conniption.
What's a conniption?
I think it's when you have a bad thing happen to you of a specific sort.
It's like tuberculosis, but like different.
So yeah, it's like
Okay.
something with your head. I don't know.
What the fuck? Oh!
Oh, you did! Oh my god, amazing!
If a clown kills me right now, I swear to God. Okay, so what did I do?
I think you just timed your jump real good.
Okay. So we were on the right path.
I guess so.
And you know the last one is opening, so we can do this. We can fucking speedrun this, bro.
This clown is coming to kill me. Oh, but he doesn't. I'm amazing.
Doesn't. You are amazing.
Thank you. You too.
And the bat, I didn't even give it a fuck. I hear the zrrr of the bat.
Nice.
You fucking shitty ass bitch clown, stupid idiot, cringer. You will never be him.
It's time. Gonna come over here.
It was a high vantage point and it was a well timed jump, so I have to get on top of the pink thing. No!
Nope. Maybe so.
Fucking hamster. I swear to God.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah, alright.
No, that's how it. Oh, it's
Come on!
Okay, fucking. Okay. We're not gonna get annoyed. We love this game.
We're awesome.
We're awesome.
We love each other.
That's not even debatable.
I know. It's just like mentioning it because we're such good friends. It's just so nice.
What if I was
Okay,
gay?
come on. I think I'd be okay with that.
This has to make
Yes,
it.
okay, good. Clown.
I fucking hate.
Okay, so there's
Stupid
two buttons
bitch.
there. There's two buttons. I think those are gonna control this arm. Yes, get the bridge for me.
Gotcha.
Yes. Oh no, you have to do it in one. It's like a claw machine. No,
That
don't fucking
sucks.
touch me. There we go. Okay.
This sucks.
Oh my god, that's annoying. You can use the shadow to determine. It's okay, that should be. No, you can only do one.
Fuck.
Okay, should be good though. Should be good.
Is it? No.
Fucking.
Oh.
Yes. Okay, it is. Okay, good. Good.
Okay.
Good. Yes. Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
Nice. Oh god, please.
Yes. Okay. Wonderful.
Okay. Good. 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 Go. Go. Go.
Go 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 go.
Get the time, get the time.
Go 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 go. Okay. We're so fucking good at this game.
What is gonna happen here?
What?
What's happening? Hello?
Hello?
It's a maze. I think it's a maze.
It's amazing.
What do you mean? Okay, hold on. The area underneath this tent is a bit of a maze. Head over the top if you want to avoid it, but something good might happen if you. No.
I'm in the maze. Oh, I did it! I got something good.
Oh, nice. Please make it out of the maze. Can I just?
Let me out!
No, I'm also seeing a maze. Wait, I'm fine. I'm good.
Oh, I'm also good.
Okay. Jesus fucking Christ. Okay, rotate that.
Come here.
What? I have to do. That's what I have to do? I have to like jump off these real little
Okay,
things?
wait, okay.
Fuck. Just go. Just go. Go, go. Right, and stop. Nope. A little bit.
Okay.
Wait, no. I have to do both things have to be above the water.
Okay.
Damn it!
Jesus.
This is really hard.
Please make it out of the maze.
Zero trends. Please make it out of maze. I wasn't in a maze.
The fact also the 50 seconds. Nick.
Yeah, it's because I fell in water twice.
Okay, we can do this. These fucking clowns.
One needs more bitch clowns. These aren't bitch clowns, they're asshole clowns. It's different.
Different flavor of shitty clown. So shut the fuck up, you shitty
damn
ass
it.
dickwad fuckbat. No! You fucking.
Well, at least bet got off you. We might have lost less points that way.
Maybe actually.
Nice, nice.
Shitty
Go down,
ass
go
dick
down.
clown. Time.
Also time. Good time.
Kill the clown.
Fail.
fail at killing the car.
Go on, kill the car.
Get on top of the hamster. Get on top of the cars.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
do it. You can do it.
It has to. Yes!
Okay, good.
No, don't. I swear to God. Okay. Okay.
Nice, clean. And
There we go.
that is so good. Go with that. Nice.
Did we get it? Yes!
Yeah, we fucking got it. We fucking got it.
I'll get the time in the meantime.
Yes. Oh, smart, yes.
Look at us!
We're so good at this.
Should I get the 50 seconds? Wait. No.
Well, you can just see it. I mean, it's just kind of. I mean, I think the maze is also like invisible anyway. I'm just rotating my controller and hoping.
Well, I got the
Oh,
50 seconds.
I got through and I didn't get anything. Just jump on top. If you're on the side, go back. Just jump on top of it.
Oh, that's what I mean. Come on!
There you go. Okay, good. Bad.
Bad. Okay, now this one.
Okay, yes. That, a little more.
Come on.
Go. Okay. And, ooh,
Top of the water.
yeah, this is, okay.
Yes, okay. Okay.
The other
No, other way! Okay. But now I know. Wait, so 1 second. Yes, okay.
That's on me. That's on me.
That's okay.
I got the time.
Do we have to? Oh, great. Oh, could you make this jump?
Can I? Yeah, maybe I can just make this jump.
Yes!
Okay. And you can just jump on the leaf.
Yes. Don't fall.
Oh god, it's right there. We can make it. Yeah, go. Yeah.
Okay.
Woo!
S
rank.
fucking rank. We deserve this one.
We do,
fucking
we
deserve
do,
this.
we
Oh,
do.
you want your tea? And a tea.
Oh yeah, I forgot about our tea.
We deserve it.
We also made some tea as
Some normal tea. This
as
is
a-
normal.
Yeah, some normal tea for some normalcy.
Lol.
Well, this is like the scary area of the park.
The scarier.
Yes. Whew, this game takes it out of you, I gotta say. E rank, the best rank. A conniption isn't an actual disease. It's apparently a specifically American turn of phrase of being incredibly aggravated, i.e. having conniptions is giving me a conniption. Okay.
Okay.
Huh. Interesting. I did not know. We're learning so much here today in Happy Park or whatever this place. Park World, Happy World, Amusement World,
And where's Magical World?
Magical World.
There you go.
Thanks so much.
The nachos are really good, dude.
I should try some later. Already pretty lukewarm.
That's fine. Lukewarm tea is pretty fun for
It's the math, Dilling. Meh.
Ah, that's wise.
That's fun. The curtain. Curtain for better audio. Let's go that way.
Okay, hold this.
No. Oh, yeah. Sure. Okay. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's a good job. Yeah. You're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I did it. This is very tense. My titty was just almost out.
It's okay.
It's okay.
They can't see.
That's true. You just start shaking uncontrollably. I like that. I like fucking. I'm having a conniption because I love to say I have tuberculosis at anything.
I have tuberculosis. It's like the negative version of I think I have COVID.
I think I have COVID.
I never understood I think I have COVID like logically.
Yeah.
I understood the emotion behind it.
Yeah,
Which was being incredibly attracted to someone, you know, instantly.
yes.
But the reason is because you get so hot
Yes.
that you think you have a fever. I get that now.
Replace my GBA games batteries. I will have to learn how to solder.
Nice. Don't learn how to solder. Just use duct tape. It's okay.
You can do it. I know how to solder and it's really fun.
Oh, all the honey was at the bottom.
Do you mind?
No, it's fine. It's just a big surprise.
Sneakers verhuisd. Oh, funny.
Okay.
There we go.
As a non-binary, I naturally feel more comfortable within labyrinths and other mazes.
Yes, I very, very, very deeply, violently agree with this.
That was. Hold on. I think is it because you've just recently discovered you're non-binary, or is it because of Ash, of the Minotaur?
Well, both.
Okay.
It is a wonderful,
Maybe the
violent
Minotaur.
coincidence.
The Minotaur helped you realize. I think.
Yeah, specifically Ash like took my head in his big ass fucking hands, and he said they them, and I went like.
He came to you in a dream.
He came to me in a dream. He punched me in the dick. I said period. He said die. They them. And like he was using it as like an insult, but I
Yeah.
was like, that's not an insult. That's my truth. And he was like, damn, I'm so sorry for being phobic.
He did say that. I remember
did say that, yeah.
I was also there.
Brody!
Spooked!
Brody's there! Yay! Brody!
Oh,
I fall down the hole.
Don't fall down holes.
Okay, I won't anymore.
You did it.
Look at these little.
Can I just
Look at these little. They're like Flatwoods monsters. It's so cute.
Oh, wait, okay, they do come back. They're just lambs for the slaughter, huh?
Awesome.
Awesome.
Time.
Time.
Oh fuck! It's a evil. What is it?
Oh! Baller! I died.
There's a big guy here. Hello. Okay, bye.
Oh, I can stand on this. This is the best.
Wait, I think that was the guy that keeps turning into a bat that's fucking us up. Wasn't it?
What did I... Sorry,
Am I supposed to do something
this is
here?
about to be me. Yeah, killing us.
Did you quit? I think you switched it to quit.
Did I quit?
Yeah, you did.
Oh no! Wait, can we...
No, it's fine. We can just continue from the level.
What do you mean? D? It's S rank.
No, it is S rank.
Oh, sorry. I don't have my non-existent glasses on.
Yeah.
You should...
No, it is a D. It means S rank.
Oh, gotcha. I don't understand all these gamer terms. I just listen. You guys
You
talking
mean the
about...
alphabet?
Yeah, it's like alpha male, beta Beth, sigma Beth.
Sigma dick.
Sigma dick.
Sigma hounds on him.
No!
No!
We're so good at this! How many moths do I have to kill before it'll be enough? No! Are you fucking kidding
Oh
me?
my god.
It's because I'm such
Also,
an asshole.
Brody would like to ask about the yams while they're in danger.
You see, they're purple.
Yes. Just like Rinte, therefore climate change.
Therefore, climate change. Are you fucking kidding me right now?
Okay, what am I doing here? I moved this. You have to jump on that swinging thing.
I fucking
Try jumping on that swinging thing. That thing.
Oh, I think I have to stand on this. I did that like 3 times just now.
Well, I pushed a button to make it move, so
Let me try. I think it's a like X, but we'll try.
try jumping on it.
Yes,
You
we'll
never
do.
know, because the thing I do makes that thing swing, so
Thing is-
it makes it feel important that it swings.
We can't die, so
No, we're too amazing.
yeah. And we're God's special little. Oh fuck! I wrote a card for one of my friends' birthdays the other day, and I wrote down God's favorite little PogChamp, and like she deserves it, right? But okay, wait. So I just now I managed to stand on this thing. Let me try this once. Okay, never mind.
Try my thing.
Yes.
No, okay.
Wait. First kill this one. What is it? Do we have to grab hold? I just not okay, but let me stand on this. Let me try. Yes! See?
What? Okay. Then what's the fuck is the point of?
It's so that I'm careful when I jump over.
Huh? What's going on?
I would like to ask about the yams. Yeah, the yams, huh?
The yams.
It's the polar caps, it's the yams.
the changing of the climate.
It's climate change, bro. Did you hear about the yams?
Yes.
We should start a podcast about it.
Yeah, we should start it. We should call it Yamcast.
Can I already stand on it, actually?
Yeah, I don't know why you wouldn't be. Yeah, you can.
Oh, did I just tilt it? Hold on.
Just try to make the jump.
Okay, so that thing prevents me, so I have to jump on the moth too.
Ah, okay. So what the fuck is the point of my button?
Oh, should I?
Damn it.
What am I doing wrong? Okay, wait.
I think you just missed the jump. Oh. Are you sure? I feel like you should just be able to jump on it.
I should. What the fuck? It usually just clips onto it. Yeah, like that. Okay. Come here, moth. Okay, time, come here.
I still feel like that's not what we're supposed to do, considering I have a button there that doesn't do anything. But all right,
Maybe we're just too good.
that's probably it. I'm rotating this.
I'm supposed to be able to get on top of it.
Can you open the door? Yeah, okay, you
Yes.
can grab it. Okay, can you go through?
Yes?
Yes,
Oh,
okay.
this is a very violent area for me to be
Yeah,
in.
this is scary. I'm like, well, I've got torture devices here. Ow, fuck.
Money! I mean, whoa! A lot of money!
Get it, yeah. You get so much times, and I don't get anything.
Oh,
Do you
wait.
have to also do it?
Come here. Straight at you. Come here.
But I'm going. Are you going?
Oh, I'm not doing anything. Is this something I...
Yeah, that thing. Just try to use the thing over there. Do something with that.
Come here.
Oh, yep. Okay, grab it. Keep doing that.
Come here.
Yes.
Yes. I think that's... Okay, maybe now.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
There you go. Where am I? Oh, I'm over here. I was idly just using the control stick while looking over you.
Was that a fucking witchy thing?
What is it? What the?
I love these
shit.
things. There's ghouls and such.
It's my favorite.
Do I have to get one of
You have
these?
to kill all the ghouls?
I don't want to kill the ghouls.
I do. Aw, damn it.
Maybe I do want to kill the ghoul.
Bye, Brody. Go back to work.
Bye, Brody. Have a good time.
Thanks for coming. This time.
This time.
This time I know exactly what to do.
And we're not gonna make any mistakes.
None a single
Like,
one.
obviously, we never make any mistakes.
See? See the jump I did?
Yeah.
It's awesome. Here, check it out. I'm doing it. I'm doing it all. And more.
Boom. A boom.
Fuck.
Video games.
Yes.
I know her.
Easy. We're done.
No.
But no, we need no more video games. That was an intended strat.
That was intense trap.
Memory manipulation.
No.
That was also memory.
It was also memory.
That can't get me. That got me.
Bad can't get. No, it didn't. And if it did, it's what, like, because, you know. No, you won.
Why do I make this shit go away? Fuck off.
I think it's just like there now.
Why are you making it go?
Okay, it's because I have to rotate it first. Don't do anything. No.
Oh, I see.
Okay, let me. Okay. Now do it. There you go.
I see. Gorgeous.
Why don't I have any like time here?
Time.
I know
Oh,
my
I
eye
see.
can't get
This
some
is a
time.
very violent area.
Oh fuck.
There's a ladder. Pick a ladder. Okay.
But I can just go. I think.
Why does this take so long? Oh, it's just heavy, I guess.
Some things are heavy.
Are you fucking kidding me?
It's dark. Not yet. What? Maybe we have to rotate the other way.
Oh.
Kills. Oh.
Okay, so what the fuck do we do
Ow.
here?
What? I don't know.
There's something grabbable within the field of view.
There's something here. What? Ow. Ow. The fuck?
What the hell?
Hitting me twice. What the
Ow!
This game's so rude. Can we go back to the kayak? I miss it.
No.
I think it was funny.
The kayak was, we did figure Gesundheit. G2.
Thank you.
We did figure the kayak out, right? Like, we did it.
So we can do this too.
Yeah, Steph. Oh, I'm already down. Are you kidding?
We're too good at games. And we are going to get an S rank, as it turns
We
out.
already have an S rank.
We already have it. It's preordained.
Preordained, baby. Okay, see? Effortless. This is the easiest strat in the game.
I'm just gonna keep going because you don't need my help.
I hate this one. Oh, okay, it's easy.
Good job.
I guess it was just a matter of. Oh, did you already do
I
it?
did it.
Perfect! Look at us!
Look at
Yes!
I can't jump down from here. What the fuck? This game sucks.
It's a bad game.
Back game. She sneezed. The sneeze counter is at 39. Ow, fuck.
Some time. I'd like some
We
time.
have so much time. We're awesome and good.
Oh, we have so much time. Babe, this is the S rank experience.
Yeah, man. Don't even worry about it.
Why does
Cream,
the
you still
fucking
can't
take so long?
Don't know. Because the game just hates you.
Me, personally? Well, maybe I should. As we've established, I would take responsibility for the fall of Rome if necessary.
It's true.
Oh, they have like whip chains! Queens!
So something happens here. Maybe I just... Hold on. Maybe first avoid the attack and then jump on him or something.
Yes.
Come on. Okay, and then... Well...
Okay, so I guess
did it
that's
wrong.
not it.
Well, I might have just done it wrong.
Okay.
Let me try again. Come on.
Come on.
Come
Come on,
fuck.
buddy.
Okay, and then... Fuck.
No. So they just kill you, I guess. So what do we do here? Is there... Oh, there's a door here. Let me see.
Don't think that's it. No, you just cannot jump on them. They have way higher hitbox.
Would I be able to get up on top of something?
Can we kill the little ones? Fuck, dude.
Huh.
What the hell?
What am I supposed to do?
Chat, help. Can some... Dude, just want to ask them if they can look up a walkthrough or something? Because I have no idea what the fuck to do.
Okay, let's try one more time and then check out.
Okay, nobody else. Nobody tell us just yet.
No! Well, you know.
You can give suggestions, but you cannot just tell us the solution if you know it.
You have to tell us a secret first. One of your secrets. No, you're kidding me.
Damn. We just have to make it to the goal, I think. Ban
you.
them.
Thank you.
Don't ban them.
Don't do it. Okay. No.
Ow, fuck.
That was left. These violent fucking ladders. Why the fuck are you this?
So rude. I can tell you the secret of the ooze. That's not relevant right now. Stay on
I
topic.
don't want the ooze secret. I know the ooze secret. It's been in my family for generations.
I made the ooze. But we don't... My family does not know the secret. Rose's family knows the secret. My family made the ooze.
Yeah. We're just, you know, real type like that.
Yeah. Our bond goes back generations.
Oh, maybe ask the chicken. There's a chicken.
Oh
up
yeah, I
there.
forgot.
What is he saying? Do you see those
these
shadows? They're enemies.
So be alert, but two of the shadows are the keys to opening the door. If you look carefully, you can tell which shadows they are. Stomp on them to get out of here.
I see.
Okay, I'm just gonna... Well, not that one.
Are they not the small ones?
Is it the ones that move? This one moves. Fucking
Okay,
Christ!
that's not it.
The hitboxes are stupid. Fuck! I hate you
I
forever.
think it's the ones that move. I think you're correct. Or are they the big ones? This is difficult. I like how focused we get.
I really do.
When it's easy, we're just goofy goof. But right now, we are serious o'clock.
Okay, Vexadel says I've looked up the answer and you're not gonna like it.
Oh no, do we have to stomp on some goons? No! Are you fucking kidding me?
Do you just want them to tell us?
Yes,
Yeah, just tell us.
just tell us.
Just tell us.
We've given up. Goodness fucking good molt. Did he molt ik helemaal niks van. Are you kidding me? Is this gonna be the part where we fall?
No, no,
Is this the part
no,
where we
Rose,
fail?
Rose, no.
Is this
We're
the
gonna make
part-
it through.
Is this the part where I won't be able to go on?
Rose,
Look at this. The way I've been making these jumps since I was a child. Zombie.
let's think about it. Remember, we wanna be the very best.
Why the fuck? I've made that jump 7 times
Because
now.
we're getting too stressed, so we have to sing.
Okay.
To catch them is my real test. To train them is my cause. I forgot to jump on.
Do do do.
I will travel across the land. Circle. There you go. Each Pokemon to understand the power that's inside. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em.
You have to stomp on the. So ignore the shadow critters that pop up. There's 2 shadows that don't spawn near
My
the
best
end of the
friend.
ramp. There's 2 shadows that don't spawn. Don't.
So ignore the shadows critters problem. There's 2 shadows that don't. The don't spawn critters near the end of the ramps. Alright.
Oh, did you do it?
Yeah, I did.
What the fuck?
What? I did it! Pokemon, oh, you're my best friend. World we must defend.
What the fuck is this shitty
That.
shit that? It's okay. We just continue and move on.
I don't know the full lyrics of the Johto theme song, it's really good.
What?
The fucking Johto theme song.
I don't know. I only know JoJo.
Well, give me Johto theme song, give me Johto theme song.
You have to do the trumpet.
I don't know it. Is it this?
Oh no, there's a different JoJo. It's way more important.
Is it this?
Oh fuck. I think you're one of the. Nope. But which one? It's the ones that stay in the same place then.
I mean, maybe they do come up, but they don't.
This sucks.
Or maybe they do move around, but they don't pop out. What? I didn't even
get it.
see it.
So ignore them that pop up. There's 2 shadows that don't. Near the end of the ramps.
Do you know this one, Leave It No Part?
Hoe gaat ie?
Okay, well, I'm just gonna do the refrain.
What the fuck do you mean? I was too good at this.
Leven het Nijlpaard. Shit. Wait. Leven het Nijlpaard. Wat een schitterend dier.
Ja, feestje.
Dik, lui en lelijk. Ligt hij in de rivier.
Dit is echt een sleden nummer.
Je hoort hem nooit klagen.
niet.
Het Nijlpaard heeft stijl.
Period. What the fuck do you mean? So we have to go back. You have to go back.
Godverfucking domme. Met zijn
Ding.
kont in de Nijl.
Ja, lekker.
It's a really good song.
So,
Oh,
the
nee,
yellow
man.
has to be up. Nou, oké.
Nee, eerder komt gewoon de roze zijn, zeker weten hoor.
Ja, maar weet je, dit spel
Dit spel
is
is...
gewoon aan.
Ja, dit spel is gewoon
denkt,
fucked.
nee,
Het haat ons
hey.
gewoon. Dat is gewoon het is inderdaad.
Het is gewoon wat het is. Ze haten ons omdat we Brabanders zijn en dat is het.
Dat is het gewoon inderdaad. Ik ben een gladlonger.
En dat, fuck jou, je bent een onderneming Brabander.
Thank you.
Ik was laatst in de biep aan het werk en
Aha.
ik zei houdoe tegen de man en zei, hé, ik kom uit Eindhoven. En ik zei, oh, dat zijn wij vijanden. Hij zei van, hoezo zijn wij vijanden? Maar ik zei, oh nee, dat zeg ik altijd tegen Brabanders, van ik kom uit Tilburg, dus jij komt uit Eindhoven, dus we zijn vijanden. En dat is toch een grapje? Dus van, vind ik een heel Tilburgse opmerking. Ik zeg, fuck jou, Bram! Kut, Bram!
That's really funny. Where the fuck are these shadows, dude? Like, is it this thing? Look at this. Is it that? It looks like this, but I can't fucking hit it.
Maybe if I stand on it.
Wait, maybe I have to hit yours and you have to hit mine.
How?
I don't know. Fuck, dude. Okay, hold on. Direct from the strategy guide. Look for a tile that is darker than the rest of the floor between the 2 big shadow creatures and the last trees. Have Cookie and Cream stand on these dark tiles together. Fuck off, dude. Okay.
There, this time.
There we go.
Well, that was easy and efficient, and now we're gonna die because these creatures suck. But now we know. But now we know. But the thing is that now we know. It's okay. It's okay.
I wanna be the very best. like no one ever was. Each Pokemon to understand. No, wait. No, wait, that's not it. I'm gonna be
catch
very
them is my
my true test. To train them is my cause.
I hate this one. Because I know how to do it now.
I will try.
That doesn't make it more
Across
pleasant
the
to do.
world. You did though.
Yeah.
Searching far and wide.
Okay, heal the boat.
Pokemon to understand
Power
power that's inside.
What the fuck do you mean?
See, I'm fucking telling you, dude. It was pink before.
Okay.
Yeah, you were right, Vex. We weren't gonna like it.
What the fuck do you mean? What do you mean?
It's just so absolutely fucked. Green.
Green. And I swear.
It has to be green. Okay, fine.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Pokemon, gotta catch 'em, are so true. My courage will see is through. I've got
You
teach me and I'll teach you. Pokemon,
So
gotta
am I
catch 'em all. Gotta catch 'em all. Pokemon, down, down. Gotta catch 'em all. Ever heard the full song? It goes so goddamn hard.
Okay.
So much harder than the regular version. Fucking shit, these stupid bitch ass ghosts. I hate the world.
Dick ass what stupid cunt ghosts, but we got it.
The world's got nothing to.
And I love that the game just didn't say anything along these lines.
No, the tip it gave us was bad. Okay, careful. Wait
Hey,
for them to go away.
leave.
Go.
Stupid cunt.
Oh, thank God, that's a goal.
S rank.
S rank.
S rank.
S rank, as you can see. It sounds like someone's feeling a little conniption.
Shut up! We're so fine.
Oh my God.
This is us right
That's us right now.
First try.
First try. Clownland.
Clownland. It's probably going to be so
Final.
pleasant and normal.
Time for clowns.
Oh, how did I fucking avoid those?
Fuck.
I'm such a fucking gamer. Never
I'm
mind.
gonna do a thing here. Fucking Christ, do I not? I just leave. Oh. And then I go. And then you go. It's a small jump stick, I think. Yeah. Oh. Elephant is so happy and going.
Oh, good thing.
What a beautiful elephant. Taking a nap.
I feel like elephants
fucking
should be able to do whatever.
I agree. I think they generally do. Which is good. I fucking love Takeshi's Castle, dude. No.
Hey, we're doing so well. Wow, it's so out of my range, dude. I'm being confronted with this at the time.
Really?
Yeah, I'm an opera singer at heart.
Dude, opera the style. Fucking go! Oh wait, we don't have to. I wanna be the very best. Very best. Like no one ever was. Teach Pokemon. To catch them is my real test. Fuck you! Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all. It is you and me.
You mean fire? That's not cunty. That is kind of cunty.
It's a little bit cunt.
Shut the fuck up with the fire.
I go up these stairs. I'm up here now.
Are you just going? Are you just on?
I'm on the stairs. Jump through.
But
You can do it.
I can't. Oh, I
You
can.
can do it. See, I always believed in you forever.
Yeah, if only I believed in myself is the thing.
I don't care. I believe in you. It's
Oh,
more
thank you.
important.
I'll believe in. Okay.
Just believe in me to believe in you.
Okay. Pokemon, gotta catch them all. It is you and me. It is you and me. My blunderbuss. I shot it once. What? All of my dams have an exceedingly large posterior. What is this? How Americans think British people, Ralph. You stupid fool! I drowned you in a pool filled with blood.
Oh my god.
Wait, let me see if I can find it actually. Filled with blood. Stupid fool. Fall in a pool. Should we just watch TikToks the rest of this?
I don't know if we should. We have to do a sippy.
I shot it once.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm at 3%. It's gonna die.
Oh, well, maybe don't do it now, then we can watch it after the stream.
I have to find it. No, it's a matter of perspective.
Also, we should quit after this world.
Should we?
We've been going for almost 3 hours.
Have we?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
It's wild, right?
Oh, my ladies have an extremely large posterior. Where is he? Ah, found it.
Nederlands.
Oh, yeah, like in it. I challenge you. Not sword that stays upon my waist. I'm very clear.
My acquaintances locked in the dungeons to get away with Maximilian. That mistake. Containing blood. You hear that? I rammed a bus. I shot it once. While as a top highwayman of this location, all of my games have an extremely large gluteus maximus.
Oh my god! Wait, did we get rated? We got rated! Oh my god!
I can feel my acquaintances left in the dungeons eating gruel. You're trying to go to war with Maximilian. Get left in a pool.
Hello, Jody, and all your
Oh, should I play it again and hold it up to the
No,
mic?
no, it's okay. Hello? Hey, gang.
Containing blood.
Oh my god, it's extremely large. Maximus.
Locked sword that stays upon my waist.
Oh,
I'm very cool.
you should link it in the Discord, absolutely.
I'm gonna like it at the disc.
Why are you so noisy? It's just over like, especially in the same room, yeah. Anyway, hi everyone. I'm Zoe
Hello.
Queen. This is my dear friend, Rose.
Hello, I'm Rose.
Hi.
I'm
Should not challenge me.
It's so dear, little fool. Don't do it again.
Free all of my acquaintances out.
Oh my god.
The eating gruel that kills me. Eating gruel.
Okay.
Ooh,
Hi, gang.
Hello.
We're playing a normal game and being normal.
we're normal. The video has been linked.
It's in the Discord if you want
It's all
to see
because
it.
of the yams, yeah.
It's because of the yams. Everything goes back to the yams at the end.
Everything goes back to the
Alright, let's finish this level at a boss fight and then we can go home.
Free all of my acquaintances locked in the dungeon. Wait,
That's
hello?
what this
Hello?
always been about. What? Is it not working? Oh. Oh shit, hold on.
Time's up. We did
Who
it.
gives a shit? Who gives a shit? Should be good now.
Dungeons, eating gruel, eating gruel, long sport that stays upon my waist. What does he say that? Fucking off! Very cruel.
Oh wait, after the help.
Blood. You hear a thud? My blunderbuss. I shot it once. So dumb.
Oh my god, it's so funny.
Keep trying to go to Maximilian. You little fool. You little fool. Get left in a pool. Containing blood. Containing blood. Fuck off.
Did you think the pool was invented?
1575.
Okay.
Do you think the pool was invented?
Well, only you know that one guy who was like so rich that he went on like a big tour to show everybody all his gold.
Oh yeah, what's his name? Bill Woods, come to me, tell me.
I don't remember. Anyway, I know that at some point his wife wanted to go for a swim, so he just had his servants that he had with him build a pool. So I know that pools existed then, at least. It's very funny to show up in Dutch jump scare.
Ja, dat heb je. Ja, dat
Good,
is.
good, yeah.
Soms zit dat zo.
It's been a while since I got to raid you. I forgot how confusing your streams are when you haven't been here since the start.
Listen.
We're normal.
We're normal. Can you fucking believe how normal? I remember the very first time I ran through these clowns, I did so without getting hit a single time.
And never again.
And I was about to say that I've never managed since, and then I managed!
Oh, good job. I did not.
Collection of pure blood. Containing blood. My blood.
Dude, what do you like in your coffee, Jody?
What do you like in your coffee, Joe?
I hate coffee. Okay, play in the fucking space.
Play in the fucking space.
What would you put in it to make it no longer be something you hate? Maybe like something to add to the taste.
Maybe.
Maybe vanilla, you know?
Oh wow.
Chocolate, I guess.
Chocolate, I guess. You know, I can really recommend this new fucking.
It's new diet.
Would you fucking let me go through the fire, please?
And flames.
And we carry on. Actually, that song fucking owns.
It's a really fucking good song.
Oh my god!
Grab, in here.
Come back. Come back.
I died.
What the fuck? Okay.
Oh, bye.
My blunderbuss. I shot it once.
Okay, yes. I hit Lego. I don't know if I was supposed to do that.
I also like it.
God damn it.
God damn it. I need to go to dinner because I'm fucking starving. You can do it!
Anyway, you should do some vanilla yogurt in your coffee anyway, so we're, you know.
And we call it Coffert.
We call it coffin, because you'll kill
You'll
you.
fucking die!
Fucking die. This game looks so difficult. Nah, it's fine.
It's normal.
It's a normal game. Do it. Go.
Did I ever send you that fucking TikTok of the girl who's like, this is my impression of me getting my head ripped off. Oof! Ow! I need that! Whatever you do comes back to you.
You have not.
I'll send it to you. It's the same girl that's like, I think every woman should be allowed to be as annoying as humanly possible. She has the courage to keep speaking when everyone else is like, I don't know. We just keep speaking anyway. Maybe you should shut up, unless you're a woman, in which case...
You've not sent me that either.
I did. I definitely did.
Okay, I'll believe you. I have shit memory.
No, it's okay. Maybe I'm gaslighting you. It's like...
you-
Yesterday I said to Luke, I've never lied to you except about Ringo Starr.
Fuck. Is that true?
That I've never lied to Luke except for...
Can you come back?
How?
I don't know.
How?
I don't know.
Zoe, I miss you!
Miss you
Let's
too.
go!
Let's go!
This is... Oh.
Would you respawn there too? So there's just no... Oh wait, I think you can walk back around. Yeah, alright. Anyway, if you're wondering what coffin tastes like, just
don't.
watch
Just
the,
keep wondering.
watch the VOD, I guess, and you'll at least get
Some noises.
you'll know what it's the reaction of people that know what coffin
Well,
tastes like.
so I was very proud of myself because I took a sip and my instinct was, but I was quiet because I'd promised to not react until you reacted, and then thank God your reaction was a little bit bigger than mine. So you went like, as I was like,
It was disgusting.
yucky, bah, ew, boo, and so.
God, I love when they make us do platforming with these camera angles.
Yeah, containing blood.
Dude.
Can I please jump through the fire?
And fine.
We carry on, please! I'm crying. This game is about as fun. Maybe I do understand conniptions now. We've learned a lot today.
Okay. Yes?
No! My blunderbuss, I shot it once.
I shouldn't run.
But we're so strong. We're gonna try one more time, and if it doesn't work...
Wait, I just realized that we missed a bunch of chat messages. They do appear on the stream, but not in our chat log.
Oh!
I can see how FromSoft went from this to Dark Souls. Absolutely, yeah. 1 ounce of the Jägermeister and 1 large something of mayonnaise.
That sounds tasty. I have some Jägermeister at home.
Well, put some mayonnaise in that bitch.
I don't have mayonnaise.
Have a sippy.
Have a sippy. Why is the chat not linking up?
I just died for a second. I don't know. Does that sometimes? Twitch is normal.
Twitch is normal.
Twitch is a normal and functional thing. I got some eggs.
Hey, we missed a bunch.
Yeah, I'm good at that. Soda Vampire,
Hello.
Hideous Mirror,
Bonjour.
Viridescent Fae. Thank
left
you
in a
all. Oh shit, one more hour. Before midnight, and then the world explodes.
Oh, yippee.
Egg.
If you get some lemons and eggs, you can make your own mayo. That's true.
That is very true.
Okay, 1 ounce of Jägermeister and 1 large spoonful of mayonnaise is a cocktail called Smoker's Cough.
I don't believe it.
My cocktail called Smoker's Cough is cinnamon powder
Mine is a cigarette. 7 cigarettes.
a day for a
No,
while.
in my mouth at once. It's just like, okay, so I put 7 cigarettes in, what's a trechter in English?
I forgot.
I put 7 cigarettes in my fucking mouth and I light them all at once and it's called smoker's cough.
It's bad. I've seen you do it. I've decided.
Yeah, no, it's tasty and it's really good for you.
Things can be bad and tasty at the same time. Just look at Coffin.
I shan't actually. I
I don't
shan't.
even want to look at it. Fucking Christ, I hate this bridge with my life.
I was about to say, oh, I'm figuring it out. No, I'm not.
Man, I hate Takeshi's Castle so much.
I hate this one with the fucking fire. Maybe it's the, 4, 3.
I forgot the time. Oh well.
Well-
Damn it, I shouldn't have forgot the time.
Why was there smoker's cough and ye looking at
Why was there no smoking cup in Valhalla?
Oh, it's real? Oh, wow.
Apparently, look at it, it seems real. Fuck. Why? Why would you do that?
Just
to
get over it. That's.
Why did I hit the bridge? Shut up! I do love that it's called Smoker's Cough. That's very funny,
that's
actually.
really great. A lot of cocktail names are excellent. I love ordering a Sex on the Beach. I also like. Who was it again? Who in a TTRPG ordered a Long Island iced tea, and we had to explain to them like.
I think it was Nico. Was it?
It was Nick, but I don't know what character he was playing.
Nico? Because it was during the Japanese horror one.
Nori?
Oh, did I say Nico? I mean Nori, yeah.
So he orders a Long Island iced tea because it sounds like iced tea, but a Long Island iced tea is like notorious for being very heavy on the alk.
Okay, come on.
Why do I keep doing this?
It's too early. We have so much time though. Look at our time. Oh, this sucks. Again,
This sucks. Okay,
this is
don't jump too early now.
the run back of shame. The back.
Don't you fucking
I
dare!
don't think. Nice. Okay.
I did it again!
And I did it late.
You can't win with this.
Okay. And go. Yes. No.
I managed like thrice. Oh, I hate this.
We can still make it.
Is the killer. I know. I've had some vague evenings in the wake of a Long Island iced tea. Do we still have the power to do this? Like the power we have, but I mean like the fortitude? How do you feel? How do you feel?
I'd like to do it.
I would like to do it as well.
Let's try at least one more time.
We can do it. I believe in us. Like,
Close.
yes. My
I
blood.
wanna be the
That's not my
very-
range.
What's your range? Is a song? What's the song I also know? She was looking kinda dumb with her finger and her thumb in the shape of an L on her forehead.
Well, the years start coming.
Wait, hold on. No, that's not how it starts. Hold on. Somebody once told me the world is gonna roll me. I ain't the sharpest tool in the shed. She was looking kind of dumb with her finger and her thumb in the shape of an L on her forehead. Well, the years start coming and they don't stop coming. Back to the rules or you hit the ground running. Didn't make sense not to live for fun. Your brain gets smart but your head gets down. So much to do, so much to see. So what's wrong with taking the back streets? You never know if you don't go. You never shine if you don't glow. Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on and get paid. And it's all
Only shooting stars. No, please.
called.
No, please. I don't want to be in this corner. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. We can do this. Okay, you know what song we're gonna sing? We're gonna sing something peaceful, something kind. What is it? What's something stupid?
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder where you are. That's as much of it as I know. I think I've exhausted all the songs that I know the lyrics of, which are All Star and the Pokemon theme song.
Yeah, that's them. Okay.
All Star to anger sweet. Fucking crap.
What the fuck do you mean? So true. Take some burn. Sorry. So how are you feeling?
Bad.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm not feeling ideal.
No, I'm feeling unideal.
I'm feeling like this game is a little mean.
Spirited? Or like greedy?
Spiritually. This is a I feel like this is a punishment in hell that somehow has made its way over to the material plane.
Would you like to specify what kind of hell this is? Is there maybe like a place that I could stay within this hell?
You mean like some sort of hotel?
Like an inn. Yeah. Like an inn or a B&B or
Some
maybe
sort of like inferno, perhaps?
yeah, an inferno, like maybe like a hotel would be nice.
A hotel, yeah.
Yeah.
It would be interesting. I feel like at some point there must have has been something like that.
There has definitely been hotels. Don't.
You're so stupid.
There could be, and there might be, and there will be, and there has been. Hotels.
Stop. Dumbest bit.
I can't fucking wait until we play that shit, dude. Play.
Watch.
Watch that
What if
shit.
there's a Hasbro Hotel game? I don't
There
know.
will be once I'm done with them.
Interesting.
What do you do in a
Rose,
husband?
Rose and Luke have convinced me. No, that's not true. Rose and Luke have talked at me about Hasbro Hotel, and then I went, let's watch it.
We told Zoe she had a favorite character. She was like, which one? We decided that she had one.
Like, I didn't even ask. You guys just decided.
Oh, yeah, it was-
outside of, like, for no reason,
There's
decided
this-
that you were going to pick my ride or die favorite character for me.
There's this thing I like to do when I watch media with friends where I just kind of decide that regardless of what I think their actual taste is, I will pick a favorite for them. So when...
Nice and clean, nice and clean.
Don't you fucking dare! Nice and clean.
Nice and clean.
Simple and clean is the way you're making it. Okay. Are you fucking kidding me? No! We both. So it's an easy restart.
Okay, wait. Jump. Okay, yes. And now... There's a thing. It's gonna kill me.
What is this?
Ow, what the fuck?
What am I
Okay.
supposed to do?
Yeah, go. Go.
Calm down,
go.
bro.
Go. Ah, fuck.
Bro, chill. Seriously.
You go through. Okay. Good time, good time. Okay, this doesn't do anything. Go.
What the fuck am I supposed to do? Can I stand on these fools? Oh, okay, I can. That's what I'm saying.
That's kind of fun.
Wow.
That's kind of funny.
It's kind of nice.
Okay, rotate that.
Awesome.
Come on. We can do it. We can do it. We've got 40 seconds, and the goal's right there. Keep going. Keep going.
fucking-
Keep going. Keep going. Yes.
Okay. No!
No. Okay. Keep it. Hold it.
Hold it. Okay, please.
You hold it, and go. Yes. S rank.
S fucking rank. S
Goddamn rank.
fucking rank.
There it
S
fucking is.
rank.
We're
We did it.
amazing.
We did it.
We're
We
so
fucking
good at
cleared
this.
this
Yes.
game. We're
Yes.
fucking
Yes.
good at this.
Yes.
Look at us. Look at us. Hey,
Who'd have
look at-
fucking thought?
Not me.
goddamn me.
Yeah.
I want to be the very best, and we
Like
are.
no one ever
Like no one ever was.
To catch that?
Like-
My rule test. To train them? My cops.
Oh my god. Fuck yeah, dude.
Ooh, this is what it's like doing heroin. I feel a rush.
Anyway, yeah. So Rose and Luke decided. It was very funny. Like you both decided on the same character.
Yeah, because like there's only one character that is detached from the plot enough.
Yeah. Okay. The kicker. Make sure you say it last.
There's only one character that is detached from the plot enough to just not be involved in any of the shit that Zoe would particularly hate, who is occasionally funny enough that you get a giggle out of them. Only problem.
Yeah. So like they were describing the character to me.
Yes.
They were saying like, okay, she looks like this. So she's got like one eye. That's the defining characteristic.
Cute, like a cyclops, very
Yeah,
cute and sweet.
It's a pretty fun design, relatively speaking. You know, within the pretty dog shit boundaries of Hesman Hotel.
Listen,
It's pretty good design. You know. And they were describing it to me, and it's like, oh, she's like a funny little gremlin. She like, hunts bugs and she fails at it, and it's
Yeah,
funny. It's like,
she's
ha 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 ha. This sounds pretty good. I don't know where you guys are. And then
so in this entire cast, the creator of the show has been like, so everyone you can presume is bisexual except for Nifty.
except for that one character is the only canonically straight character. I'm like, why would you do this to me?
But it's your favorite, so you don't get to critique.
Yeah, it is my favorite, and I love it so much.
Yeah.
You know?
It's your favorite character.
Yeah. It's true.
So that's what I did that with Luke too when we watched the song contest. That I just decided, Luke, your favorite is Poland, and Poland sucked ass. And Luke was crying blood. I was like, your favorite? It's your favorite.
So funny. Anyway, boss time.
Oh, are we gonna do the boss?
Well, yeah, let's finish the world. If there's another water level before the boss, I'm gonna cry. No!
Oh,
Fuck!
oh, there's a.
I hate this world. I'm in the can. Oh, okay.
Oh, it just goes.
We're in the ball.
Oh, fuck! How does this fucking work?
Okay, backwards. Reverse. I push button. I push button for you. I get the time for us.
My blunderbuss. I shot it once. No. This fool!
Kill him. Oh god, I need you to... No, I killed myself. Well, that's the end of it. 3,
Blunderbuss, I shot
2,
it once.
1.
This is my final boss.
This is our fucking Waterloo. Hurry up. Thank you. And if you close your eyes,
And how could I ever refuse? I feel like I win when I lose. I'm going too fast is the thing.
you have to push him out. Let's go.
I want to take him with me.
Murder.
I can't make it up this fucking ramp.
Oh, sorry. You have to wait with it.
Why did he do that
Way
to
less
me?
space than me. Very rude.
Let me fucking get him.
Wait, Bozo! Boobin the Fool, you want to kill Jester? Kill Jester?
Yes!
Oh. You can do it. I believe in you. Fucking believe you in me so much.
If we
Also, I didn't say I hate Clown World, I just said I hate the world
fuck you.
in general. Okay, nice job. Okay, go. Yes.
Did I? No, please! I was about to say that I was acing it. Okay, no, please, let me at least get over it. Take 2.
Take. That's, yeah. Alright, first try, everyone, let's go.
I feel like I win when I
If you close your eyes,
lose.
does it
Waterloo.
feel like
I'll still
nothing?
have you forevermore. Waterloo.
to my Waterloo. How could I ever refuse? I feel like I win when I lose.
Oh, fucking Weeball.
Fucking Weeball! Kill this fucking clown. I swear to God. Oh, my blunderbuss, I shot it twice, in fact. That's how pissed I am. No.
Oh, we're eating gruel.
Look how my acquaintance is free to the dungeons eating gruel, if you please. I swear to fucking Christ. I swear to God. Stupid bozo. This ghoul. This absolute cruel fool. I'm going to get this here. Yes. Yes, murder. This is good. Yes. This is awesome. Give me the time. Please give me the. Oh. My blunderbuss.
Shot it like once.
I shot it once. Oh, my ladies have an extremely large glutinous maximum. You go into a war with Maximilian. Big mistake, you get left in a pool.
Oh, shit, my eyes can look at that. And if you close your eyes, does it
Must feel like nothing changed at all. What if I just...
Oh yeah, if you hold the controller upside down. Does it help?
No.
Okay.
Well, actually, hold on. No,
Oh.
no. Okay, now I have to get used to... I swear to God, you stupid fucking clown. I swear to God! I'm not. No. I'm not.
Oh my god.
I swear to God. Why do I get challenges like this? Why do I always get to...
Should we swap them?
No.
Schwab?
This is a matter of pride.
Schwab?
I'm going to execute it.
You can do it.
Oh, yeah, whatever.
You should maybe try less hard to kill him and more hard to leave.
But I hate him.
I know.
I want him to die.
No, me too.
And also...
No, that's wrong. Sorry.
What?
I said no, that's wrong.
That I want him to die?
No, that you failed.
That's wrong.
You crossed the fucking Christ.
But...
Okay, I want to be the very best. I don't know. This is your mantra.
I guess I'm more. It's so true. I know it's mine. That's what I'm on.
Christ.
Yes! Yes!
Oh.
I swear to God. No, please. Please. Okay. No, you're my best friend.
Well,
You're my best friend. I swear to God, why? Why do...
I catch up?
It's so true. It's the fun.
You teach me.
And I'll teach you! No! Gotta catch you more. Okay, different song. We can do this. We have to.
First try, come on, here we go.
I'm cold in the morning and the time before the light. When plans are dancing, so far away the lights also please, okay. I want this orb soup.
Oh.
Oh, I was about to walk backwards.
You're getting closer. I know. I bet the game just says like, nope. When all seems lost, remember, the gang's on the loose. Nothing you can do. The beast on the move. Bully coming through. Trigger, Tracer, Drifter coming too. And the snake that makes the Baraka crew.
No.
It's from Bianco.
I killed it in one go because my rage is so real.
Yeah, it's so real. Na, 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 na,
Oh, I
I'm
No,
leaving.
Zoe,
No.
I feel this pain.
Yeah, you do. I know you do. No. Yes. 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 Okay. So much extra time for me. This fucking clown's coming.
Get up.
I have to do it. I have to hit the button. Please hit the button. Okay, I get it. I did it. Go.
You did it.
Oh my god. Okay. Whoa. Get over there. Please.
69, nice.
Oh, okay.
Kill this balloon,
Yes,
please!
please. Okay, good.
Okay, I figured it out right at the end.
Okay, yeah, we're fucking doing it. Okay, don't do anything. I'm gonna...
Okay, wait. Now move like, you know?
Nope, don't.
You have to move that
Yeah,
one
sorry,
back.
I wasn't
Jump.
prepped. Okay. Okay, so go. And then...
I trust you, my good friend.
You,
This was on me.
Yeah, you were still too fast.
Okay.
Okay, alright, okay. No, okay, yes, no.
It's okay.
Jump on it. Okay, and then
Jump.
go. And then you count to 3. And then
Ein,
jump.
2, 3.
No, that was too soon. I'm so sorry.
This is the practice. Now that we both know with absolute
This-
precision how to... Ein, 2, 3. That's a difficult jump to make.
Yeah. Well, you went like this instead of like this.
Okay.
Wait, ooh. And then you come back. Wait, you just made this jump.
Yeah, wait.
You just
okay.
did it.
Hold it over there.
Okay, good.
Ein, 2, 3.
Yes.
Yeah!
No.
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
Don't going to do this.
S rank for sure. We're gonna get S rank on this, you know it. Oh, baby, you know we're gonna get S rank. Ain't nobody's got S rank as much as we are about to get the S rank. Nobody's ever actually beaten this game before.
That's true.
We're gonna be the first, for sure. That's how, why there's walkthroughs and stuff nobody's ever done before.
Like, this game was made for us. That's why these characters look like this. Like the yellow and the pink.
Yeah, exactly. I actually paid someone to make this game. Okay, yes, so good, so good. You're doing so good.
Listen, I figured out the ball.
Okay, put this in. Here we go. Check this tasty time.
No! 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 Kill this balloon, I swear to
Get
God.
the time, make sure to get the time.
Oh, fucking. No!
This
Okay,
is
I'll
skull, I
get
guess.
the gold time.
Oh, the bear. No, the bear.
This dickwad ass
I
bear.
hate every bear.
Me too, except for the gate.
I love those. They were awesome. Okay, stay there. Okay.
1, 2, 3. That was really close! Okay, I can make this jump if it's all the way over there.
Keep going, go on.
1, 2, 3. Oh, yes! Okay.
Yes.
What if I miss this jump?
I would kill myself.
I thought I wasn't allowed to say that!
No, you don't like to say it about other people.
Oh, okay.
Okay, jump on there. No! Oh, I'm gonna run. Okay. Okay, yes. Yes. Okay, jump on the other one. Go. Let's go. Please go. It was too late. Oh, go back. We cannot. We automatically lose a bunch more time. Okay, that's cool. That's alright.
okay, that's
There's so much time left. Okay. Jump on there, and then immediately jump to the next one. Okay.
Got
Okay.
it.
Yeah, alright. Okay.
I got it.
The moment you're okay. Yeah, you know what to do.
Yeah.
Sorry, I could have saved you there. That's
It's
okay.
okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Okay. Oh, okay, fuck.
Okay, so it has to be real fucking
Real
fast.
fucking
You make
fast.
this? No.
So I
It's okay.
maybe
It's
should.
okay.
Okay.
It's okay. We can do this. No. We can do this. I believe in us. We get better every single try. Listen, we only have to clear it once. Do you still? Okay. Are you okay?
I'm all okay.
No. Okay. I can take 3 more losses. I can take 2 more.
It's not a restart. Okay, yes, that's my turn.
Just that one. Those 5 seconds.
That's important.
Listen, it's about a smooth start. Swear to God. Like none of us. I should do this.
Shut it.
Maximilian. It lived in a pool. Filled with blood. All my acquaintances locked into dungeons eating.
Pressure is radiating through the screen right now.
Yes.
You can do it. You can do it. Yes, 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 yes.
Look.
Why did I not know? I wasn't paying attention and I fell in the hole. No!
What character voice is it?
I don't know.
It's Maximilian in the dungeons eating ghoul. Look how fucking. Okay, no, I don't get to say anything. Look how fucking smooth. This is what you get with practice, babe.
Fucking did it. We're fucking doing it. It's all happening. Careful of the bear.
I want to kill this bear. Come up to me, bro.
Oh, I fucked up.
He killed me. I was being real big.
Oh,
No!
fuck.
This fucking dick ass shitwad fuck bear.
Kill the other bear. I can even see him. Amazing. Amazing. Good job. Okay, okay, okay.
1, 2, 3.
No! I had it! I had it!
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Yes.
Okay. No, what do you mean?
Okay, when you land on it, immediately jump to readjust your position.
Yes. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Get the time. Okay, and now way fast. Okay.
So easy. Shit.
What the
I think I have to wait longer.
Okay,
I think I have to wait a little bit longer. I have to wait for you to jump first, and then I jump.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm gonna jump. You jump. Okay. No, you didn't stay. Wait, no, you weren't even on it. Never mind. You
Yeah.
were doing wonderfully. I just fucked up.
It's okay, it's okay.
Okay,
Listen, we can do this.
you can do it. I can do it. We can do it together. Okay. Yes.
Sorry, that's on me.
The goal's right there.
No, but the goal's right there.
The goal's right
This is the
there.
last
The goal's right
challenge.
there. We can
This
do
is
it.
the last
We can
fucking
do it.
challenge.
And then there's a boss, and the boss probably never even gonna be that hard. Bosses are usually not that hard. It's fine.
See this one? Okay.
We're gonna be okay. We're gonna make it through. You, me, and chat.
Me and Chat.
You, me, chat. You, me, and chat.
That's,
You, me, and Pokemon. That's a Pokemon song.
that's
But it's
the,
chat instead.
It's the new. It's a new sitcom I'm working on. It's about two VTubers.
No chat.
Yeah, it's like a goofy buddy com sitcom. Can I make this without killing the clown? No. I swear to God, Maximilian, are you kidding me right now?
Kidding me.
I hate
restart.
this. Let's restart. Okay.
Oh, this is normal. This game is so normal. You know we're gonna have to do a third stream to like beat it, right?
Yes, and it's okay. I'm willing to suffer. We have to complete this.
I think that's
And-
suffer because it's together.
Listen, we opened up on such like a goofy, funny, jovial note. We have to go through this. This stream contains the full
It contains
expanse of human
multitudes.
emotions.
As was said earlier.
As was said, as has been stated. My blunderbuss, I shot it once. I swear to fucking Christ, Maximilian, don't you fucking dare with this dickwad bullshit. I know
I hate
you wanted to go to
Clown so
theater.
goddamn much.
You wanted to go to theater school. Your dad said no. You're gonna become a clown like the rest of the family. Listen, I know it's been difficult for you. You don't get to take that out on me. Maximilian the clown. Fuck you.
You murdered him, and it's what he
It.
deserved.
He deserved it. Maximilian the clown was a fucking freak.
Okay,
You know, he evaded taxes and not on the cool way.
that's true.
In the way where, like, you know, sweet old people have to.
Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Look how fucking smooth
There you
as
fucking go.
fuck.
There you fucking go. There you
They
fucking go.
fucking go. And
You better not feel safe, Melson off the clown.
dick ass.
Okay.
Shit.
Play safe. Play
fuck
safe.
dude.
Play safe. Play safe. We run ahead.
Hello.
Claire on the side and your viewers. Hello. I'm waving. They can't see me. Just got out of habit.
Hello. I'm also waving
What's
my
the sound?
hands. What? That was this.
Okay. Hey gang.
Hey, gang.
We're being normal today.
This is Zoe.
This is us.
We are normal.
We're normal and in a stable state of mind.
Yeah, and happy.
And happy.
Joyful.
Yes.
Grateful.
The game is fine
And normal.
and good.
And we like it.
We're enjoying our time.
Very much so.
totally normal color green spear.
Yes.
Yes.
My blunderbuss, I shot it once. Continue.
Screw.
Containing blood. I fucking swear to God, this shit has bear. I'm just going. Look, I'm just fucking going to go. He'll get
Go,
me.
just go. Make that fucking jump. There you go.
Are you fucking kidding me? If that bear comes up to me right now. 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So much fucking time. We're doing this. We're making it happen forever. Fuck you.
Kill this dick bear.
Oh my god, I hope I do. Okay, alright, okay.
Okay. Immediately.
Wait, I fucked up.
It's okay. It's okay.
I'm sorry.
We can do this.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Take it easy.
This is so hard.
It's difficult, but the goal is right there.
The goal's right there. We can do
It
it.
is.
You do after stream stuff? Absolutely. Clear on the side. Thank you so much for the raid again. And
Thank you so much.
chill out after your stream.
Thank you so much.
If it's anything like ours, you're gonna need to chill out for a
You're gonna
second.
need to.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm dying. It sucks that we lose 2 bits of time every time.
Yes.
Jump.
Yes.
Help.
Can you make this?
Oh, I just died again.
And if we don't make it this time, I think I might just. I think I might just go take a shower or something.
Yeah, that's fair. Oh, I'm supposed to go.
It's okay. It's okay.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Listen,
No, that's it.
one more time.
Okay, well, yeah, alright. Well,
Okay, well-
that's our one more thing.
Let's just drown ourselves.
Alright.
What are we gonna do? How do you feel?
I feel like we can do it.
We easily.
It's my fault at the end here. I just don't have it in my system that I have to keep jumping. I don't know. It's weird.
I wish we could practice this, but
Yeah.
unfortunately we have to get past fucking Maximilian.
We get better at it every time though.
Yeah, we do.
It's not that much,
No.
I feel.
No.
There's one clown at the beginning.
The fucking Maximilian.
Maximilian is a
God.
fucking asshole and I hate him forever. But
yeah.
the balancing on the platforms and stuff, we're getting past that stuff easy.
Yes.
And then there's a stupid bear, and
the bear.
you just have to not run in.
Yes.
You have to let him come to you and then jump on
Yes.
him.
Okay.
And then there's just that one jump
Yeah,
that
that's
you're
fine.
so good at now.
Flop.
And then there's this fucking shit. But like,
It's okay.
honestly, it's not that long.
It's okay. We can do this. I believe in us. And you know what?
We can do it.
We can do this.
We'll stretch. We'll have the stretch and pause check. Hold on.
My blunderbuss.
Short ones.
Go too far with the Maximilian. Long sword that stays upon my waist.
Maybe you should take it out and kill him. Just gonna say.
I'm very cool. Whew, okay. We are so tense.
I really don't. Bitches love my bitches love my platforming. This time, I'm really
Gonna do it. I keep wanting to, do reverse walking because of the ball.
Yeah, I know.
You see?
Yeah, I know.
I fucking swear to God.
Restart.
Okay. Have you seen that video of the people inventing a bike where if you steer, it goes the wrong way?
No.
So if you steer to the left, it goes to the right. And they go to Amsterdam and they give a bunch of Dutch people like, hey, do you want to try this bike? And it takes them like 20 minutes to figure it out, but once they do, it's flawless.
Huh.
It's like a matter of like,
It's just muscle memory.
yeah, it's muscle memory. That's, fuck you, Maximilian. That's what you get for not going to clown college.
Okay, well you died, but it's fine because you also killed Maximilian.
Fuck you, Maximilian.
I hate him so much.
Fuck you, Maximilian.
It's his mistake for going to war with us.
Yeah, he's very cruel.
Now he's eating gruel in fucking hell.
He's eating cruel.
Gruel. Okay, what's the time? Alright, we're doing it. We're doing it. And we're awesome at this.
Easy.
Yes, easy
Lemon.
peasy. Look at that, so clean, so clean.
Easy.
So mother.
And now this shit ass fucking bear. I want to fight him just instantly.
Wait for the bear.
Kom
Wait for the bear
hier,
to come to you.
kom hier. Kom hier. En wel nu. En je schiet op. Ik heb geen tijd voor jou.
There you go, clean.
Clean. Ik spring er even op.
Uh-huh.
Oké. 1,
Wait, wait.
3.
Wait, I don't have it. Do I have it?
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
3, 2, 1.
Yes,
My
okay.
blunderbuss, I shot it once.
Clean.
Clean as a fuck. Okay, now we got
Okay.
We don't have to do it.
Stupid bear.
If it doesn't work out, it's fine. We get to practice.
Okay.
Okay. We're so okay, chat. We're so fucking tense over here. We're sweaty. We're furious. We're tense.
Okay, I have to jump. So it's like, okay, let's jump on that. Okay.
Yes.
And then I have to jump to the next one.
Yes.
It's like three jumps.
Yes.
Okay. You've
Sonic.
got this, Sonic. I mean, Sonya does.
We'll do it for the yams.
Do it for the motherfucking yams. We're gonna do this for the goddamn yams.
fucking
Take my
yams.
hand. For the
Fucking
yams.
yams.
For the yams, chat. For
the yams.
Chat, take our hand.
Take our hand, chat.
For the
fucking
yams.
yams.
Take some more.
Yes, more. Okay, for the yams. For the fucking yams.
Okay, let's go.
Now we fucking. We don't miss is the thing.
Jump. You didn't jump. It's fine. It's not fine.
Wait.
You
Okay.
jump immediately.
Yes.
As soon as you reach the platform,
Yes,
you
yes,
jump.
yes.
Yes.
Go.
Or as soon as I reach the platform. No, I think you just jump. You just jump immediately. You
Yes,
jump
I
immediately.
know.
Yes. Okay. All right. Okay.
Oh. Well, you know, Zoe. So it's the thing is, I'm really good at you.
I know. I love you. Okay. Yes. I jump. Jump. Ready?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
S-rank. Oh, we did it. Oh, we fucking did it.
Yes.
We're neighbors.
Oh my god. I don't give a fuck about my neighbors. They know. They don't even know.
First try, idiot. First
Goddamn try. Oh, fuck Maximilian, dude.
Fuck Maximilian.
That's the final boss of this game.
My blunderbuss, I'll fucking shoot it as many times as I fucking want.
Oh my god. Enjoy that goddamn gruel.
I'll enjoy that fucking gruel in the time.
Oh, yes.
We will not free my acquaintance.
Okay, the U-boats don't work. That's a shame. Whatever. I don't know why they don't work. It's fine. Oh, we're connected.
We are.
Whoa. Okay.
What's he fucking doing?
It's doing a magic trick. Okay, there's two of them now.
That's fun.
All right.
I like that they put on a little show for us.
Yeah, that's cute. Oh, hello. Double Weasel. Well, creative name.
Weasels, and there's two of them.
They're performing for us. That's nice. Okay, so I have to be at this distance always.
Okay.
And we have hammers. Hit him.
Oh, I see.
I think that was the wrong one. Which is the right one? What?
Okay, wait.
What? Which one do we hit? Do we hit
Okay,
the
that's-
same one? What?
I don't know. I did hit one just now.
I think maybe we have to wait for them to do something and then we'll know which one to hit.
Okay. Do we have to watch this fucking thing?
No, a lot of tension has been diffused now that we are
Yeah.
past that level.
Maybe just the same one?
Biggest one, maybe? Is one of them bigger? Is this one bigger?
Oh, that one did something.
What? No, I don't think it
I
did.
did-
'cause
I did
no
kill
health.
it. Look.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can hit them, but or I can't. What? What's going on?
Oh.
I can't anymore. I was hitting them before.
Oh, we have to. Yeah, we do have to stay at this distance. Interesting. What do we need to do?
I don't know.
Maybe the one attacking.
Performing for you now. If you know the words, you can weasel too. Nice. Yeah, I think maybe the one attacking we're supposed to hit.
Okay.
But I was able to hit him before, and then I couldn't anymore. That's weird. Okay,
That one.
Yeah, get that one. What's going on? Oh, I hit mine.
Yeah, I just.
Okay, that did damage. I think I have to take the same one as the one on your side that's attacking. Oh, you
That
did
did
it.
something.
Okay. So one of them on someone's side attacks. We have to get the same one on the other person's side.
I see.
I think that's what it is.
Okay. That's convoluted and frustrating.
But we figured it out. Let's see.
That one.
Okay.
Next to you.
Okay,
Yes.
got him. Let's
You
get
did
the time.
it.
Get
You
the
got
time.
it.
Get the time.
Yes.
What the fuck?
Fuck,
Where's
too
the
late.
time?
Damn it. Oh,
Oh,
get the
go, 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 go.
Okay, big time, big time. Okay,
This
yeah,
one.
that one. Nice, nice.
And we got both.
We're fucking doing this. This is so easy.
Well.
Okay.
Yes, that one.
This one or did?
That one.
Okay, nice. Okay.
Beautiful. Gorgeous.
We're so good at this. We're so fucking good at this. We're such fucking gamers. We're gonna get
Such
ass
fucking
right?
gamers. Where's fucking...
Okay.
This one.
No. Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
No. Go, get him. Yes. Okay, that's it. We're done.
Was that it? Did we
I
just
think,
do it?
Yeah.
That was fucking...
That was. I'm telling you, the bosses are so easy compared to the actual levels. You
That was fucking nothing.
have to get the
Oh,
thing. Yeah. We're so good at
We're
this.
so fucking good at this.
Let's go.
Fucking go.
Let's go.
I don't
Girls'
know.
night.
Girls?
S rank.
S rank. That's a fucking... I think
That is an
I
S.
think that's the highest we've ever gotten.
Yeah, an S rank.
Yeah, S rank.
Yeah, let's get an S rank. Also, yeah.
Yeah.
So guy.
Well, I feel a little bit older than I felt before.
I feel alive.
I feel alive! Is this why people do cocaine?
I think so. Okay, Trick World is next. Off the top of my head, I think there's 2 more worlds. Not counting this one, because I think this is a bonus world. I need this to just be a bonus world.
I need this to just be... My bones hurt.
My bones hurt. And you guys aren't even playing. Can you imagine how we feel? But you are playing. You're with us.
You are with us. Chat.
Chat.
Thank you so fucking much.
You guys are the fucking best. You guys are real heroes.
You are the real ones.
You're the real gamers.
You're here with us. That's all we can ask for.
You guys killed Maximilian.
If you will free all of our acquaintances stuck in the dungeons eating gruel.
Eating gruel. You see, here's the thing that happened. Maximilian fell down that hole. You know what was down there? All the U-bots.
All the
Beating the fucking shit out of him.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. Exploding him. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chad. You've always been here for us.
Yeah, we killed Maximilian. We were Maximilian.
You were not Maximilian.
You were not Maximilian.
Don't even fucking say that shit.
Don't fucking say that. You can't joke like that.
Don't fucking joke about that shit. I'm gonna be so sad.
Why is this my island and why did I make it to torture you two? Because
Funny.
you love us.
Yeah, because it's fun. Like, it's funny and it's
Yeah,
fun. Or
it's
it's fun.
funny,
And this game is fun. This game gives you a sense of it really is a Dark Souls game in that sense.
It really is a Dark Souls game.
It's
like,
frustrating as fuck, and it takes you like a really long time to like figure out what the fuck to do.
Yes.
And then you do it, and you're like, yeah. You
and
know?
also my soul feels darker.
Yeah.
I will never be the same thinking of the World Blunderbuss. Did you shoot it once?
Did you shoot it but once?
Trying to go to war with Maximilian. What does he say? I need the lyrics. Where's this guy? Where's my man?
I went to this reverse bar. Like, what the fuck are you gonna do? Why would you do that?
Shh, don't do it out loud. Longsword that stays upon my waist. Any place. I'm very cruel. Free all of my acquaintances locked inside the dungeons, eating gruel. Try to go to war with Maximilian. Bad mistake. Get left in the pool containing blood. You hear a thud? My blunderbuss. I shot it once. All of my dames have an extremely large gluteus maximus.
Oh my god, alright. You may shoot it once. When Eminem said you only get one shot, he's talking about a blunderbuss. That's so true. So
fucking true.
So real, so real.
Oh,
You're the only one who understands his beautiful lyrics.
yeah, Eminem has been waiting for this day.
Yeah.
I need to take a shower.
Yeah, that's fair. Oh my god.
Well, chat, thank you so much for being here for this beautiful journey. Thank you for letting me be here. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming. I had a wonderful time as always.
I always have a wonderful time with you. Age tech. I do feel my age. I love saying shit like that, pretending I'm like 80.
From software. Yep. Oh, we're playing this on a real one. It's not. It's a real PlayStation deal. Whew,
How
all
about
right.
we restart Kingdom Hearts from the start right now? How about we just put it on and you play the whole game and then the second one and then the one after that
Chain of memories.
and then the one after that
Days.
and then the one after
I
that.
haven't even started that one yet, so then I'd just be caught up.
How about we do that?
No. You gotta wait a little bit before you click the clip button.
Oh fuck.
I'll do it again. I do want to see Sora. I do miss Sora. I'll be resuming Kingdom Hearts soon. It just didn't fit this stream. I had collabs and I promised myself I'd start Signalis right away. So, oh my god, what a goddamn stream!
What a journey.
What a beautiful. I gotta say,
What?
these. I feel like it's a coincidence that these first 3 streams have been as big of bangers as they are. Not to say that I have like really bad streams and only sometimes they're very good. I just feel like these last 3 streams have been especially good,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
And
Maybe you needed, that time to marinate.
Can we use a different word?
No.
Okay.
In butter, spices, oils, and various. In a little
well.
Ziploc bag in the fridge, we put you.
Very well.
And you
that is true.
marinated.
Yeah.
Like
true.
a fish or perhaps a little bit of steak. That's what
Okay.
happened.
All right.
I'm looking very furious.
All right, Chad. Oh. What a fucking stream. Oh my god.
Good, even though yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is gonna. Oh my god.
How do you feel? Talk about your feelings.
I'm winded.
Yeah.
I had so much fun.
Yes.
I'm so glad that we did succeed.
We did. What if we quit?
What if we quit? We would have been like, well, this was a fun stream. Shame
Yes.
though, you
Yes.
know. But we fucking did it. We're so awesome.
We did it with all of us together.
Do the UK rap in the Uwu voice? If you write me down the lyrics, okay, Rose, you write me down the lyrics and I'll record myself doing it and put that online. Because it's
Thou shalt
easier.
not challenge thee to a duel, little fool. Long sword that stays upon my waist. At any
Guys, I'm really cute.
Let me fucking start taking this.
You start typing that. Okay, so
I'm at like 2%.
it's all right. You can do it later. Also,
I just do it in
also
the chat?
we can find it in the. We can find it on my computer. I'm crashing, dude. I'm done. How are you feeling? Tell me your feelings and emotions.
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling winded.
Do it in our voices so you can join.
I feel tired. I feel disgusted.
Oh yeah.
I feel everything right now.
It's not our voice anymore.
I don't want to do the Uber voice. Ik mag Nederlands praten, alsjeblieft. Haal me weg van deze stem.
Tegelijk doen.
Allemaal tegelijk.
En je moet Nederlandse our voice.
Dat ga ik niet doen.
Oké. Nou ja, dan niet hè.
Ja.
Maar dus voel je je dus.
Ik voel me een beetje als een oude handdoek.
Ja.
Geliefd, maar oud.
Ja. Ik snap hem helemaal. Ik snap het precies.
Ik word bij elkaar gehouden door touwtjes en hoop.
Yeah. Please, haven't they suffered enough?
I'm feeling good, I'm feeling great, I'm feeling winded. I'm very excited to take a shower and have a girls' night afterwards.
Girls' night.
I'm very excited to sleep after that.
Yeah, that's fair.
But gosh, what a trip. What a journey.
What a good fucking
What a
stream.
good fucking day, dude.
What a good day.
I told Zoe the moment I walked in, I was like, damn, my serotonin levels are peaking. I was like, damn.
We just love each other so much.
Yeah, it was. It's been a delightful fucking day. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
and not
I'm
just
so-
on the stream, but in your life.
It's so nice.
This is of course. This is what you get for playing fucking The Adventures of Cookie and Cream.
You find yourself.
You find yourself.
You find yourself. Also, I gotta figure out why this thing isn't working.
Maybe because all the U-bots are out there.
Maybe.
So not only did we win the game, we won friendship.
Why is Twitch not connected? No, it is. Try it again.
Try it again. Post haste.
Post haste. You blunderbuss.
I should. Hey!
Yay!
Should I try? Oh, you did.
Wait, I can do this. Oh no, wait, that doesn't work. Does that work? I don't think that works. Okay, yeah, alright, good. Yay, wow.
Ow!
So,
So,
this is the end of the stream.
This is the end of the stream.
We've made it here.
Chad, how are you guys feeling?
I hope you guys had a lot of fun with the stream.
I hope you feel delighted. I hope you feel wonderful. I hope you felt
feel
as much
awesome.
as we did.
Mm-hmm,
You went on this journey with us, and it means so much to us.
Really though? Sorry about that. No, that is like, I've said that before. That's the thing that I really love about streaming is when you like make it through a game and like chat's there with you.
Yeah,
You know?
I can imagine.
It's so nice.
Yeah. Or maybe just a regular dream. Oh, feel better
I
soon,
hope you feel better.
Melzino.
I hope you feel better soon, Mel.
In Dutch we
Damn.
say beterschap, which
Beterschap.
translates to better sheep.
Kind of. More like better ship.
It translates to betterness.
Yeah, betterness.
Betterness.
Next episode of Dimension 20 Fancy Hypermission. Drop out. I don't know if I have the energy for that anymore. Oh no, I'm
In
so
a good
sorry.
way or a bad way?
Oh no.
And then you say, bitch, you better be joking. Do you know that reference?
No.
In a good way or a bad way? Bitch, you better be joking. It's
I
from
don't-
Euphoria.
Okay, I've
You
never
look like
seen
a
it.
country movie star.
I didn't know what Euphoria was until we were chatting the other day, and I said, I think it was today actually. And
Oh yeah, I
was
mentioned it today.
like, yeah, and
was
then
like,
I
I
was like, I don't know
watched
what
it.
that is, and
Yeah.
you kind of explained it, and I still have no idea. I forgot.
Zendaya's in it and she's great. Oh, there's a really good, well, there is really good trans rap, but the show isn't for you at all, so. Hunter Schafer is.
Okay, good. I thought I'd finish the game alongside a bunch of people. How about alongside a chat? I could do that.
I could do that. I'm looking forward to playing Lord of the Rings, dude.
Me too! I'm so excited because we got to go on an adventure
Do you
together.
have should I bring the red cloak you gave me today, or should we both do like a green cloak? I can bring the cape that I had on for Elfie.
I have a green cloak also. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Should we do that?
We should do that.
should do that?
Yeah. We could do it with Facecam stream.
That's a really cute idea.
That's
Maybe
cute.
not the whole stream. I'm not
Maybe-
super comfortable with that.
That's fair. That is totally fair.
You're
Only if you
used to
want
this. The 3 seconds my face was on there, I was already like, oh my god, my hair is unwashed.
It's alright. But that's gonna be really fun. Well, we'll have to pick some days for that.
Yeah, and like we introduce with Facecam. We'll like get ready early, do like a little bit of cool makeup.
What if? No, that's too much effort. Let's get like a whole video of us like trudging through fields, like, and then like we've made it. It's like at a volcano, but it's not a volcano. It's just like the desk.
It's just like an anthill.
It's just but like the computer is there. It's like I can control it.
It's like a little mound of dirt, and you see me in the background holding a match, just like
Oh, it's a volcano.
it's a volcano.
And then we sit down and we play like a Lord of the Rings. That's how we introduce it.
I don't know if we would be able to manage, but it would be very cute.
I mean, the shittier it looks, the better. I think.
I just recorded on my phone.
Yeah. We just get a third. We just ask Nick to come along and record us.
That's so fucking cute.
That's funny. Oh, okay.
Nick, if you're here, my beautiful,
We love you.
beautiful boy, my angel darling. Love you.
Love you. And you do have to do that now. You're implicit.
that now, yeah.
All right. Let's see.
I'm so sad that Nick deleted his Twitter because I used to just tweet like, "Hi Nick, how are you?" And then every once in a while he would find it and respond to it and be like, "Stop doing this."
Maybe you're the reason why he deleted his Twitter.
Yeah, it was all me.
It's you. All right. We are going to be rating AOL because I love AOL. AOL is a fellow member of. Wait, hold on. Do your fucking plug, bitch.
Thank you so much for having me, everyone. Zoe, I'm delighted as always to be here.
I'm delighted I'll always have you.
Thank you so much. My Twitter is Rose Posted. My Tumblr is Rose Dozed. I will, if my phone, who is dying, allows, I will put it in there. I do art. I do jokes. I do my best.
Yeah.
And I'm
Which is very good.
I'm hanging out.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to pick this game up again. I'm very excited to play Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Me too.
Thank you so much, Clone. Kiss, kiss, kiss for you,
Close the
Clone.
best. Close the best. Okay, so we're going to rate AOL, a fellow member of RXD. She's been on this channel as well. I've been on her channel. She's just awesome. Also, yeah, Rose's art is fucking. Well, I mean, you're seeing it right here. Our PNG is still by us.
Yeah, it's true. It's
so
a little bit.
fucking good.
It's no, actually, I'm not gonna tone it down. This was very fun to draw, and I think you can kind of tell that I had a good time with it.
I'd say so. It looks delightful.
Thank you so much.
So, we're gonna rate Hell's playing Pokemon. Black and White specifically. The ones that I never finished, and then transferred all my Pokemon to a different game, and then like I was literally at the Elite Four and I just didn't feel like it, so I transferred all my Pokemon away, and so I could never finish it. So maybe now you'll finally get to be able to see the end.
What's the raid message is gonna be? Do you know about the yams?
Do you know of the yams?
Do you know of the yams?
Do you know of the
It's not about.
yam? It doesn't matter.
You know about the yams?
You know about the yams? That's the raid message?
Yeah. Let me get into Twitch.
Alright, the raid is starting soon. So, like, once again, thank you guys so much for coming. I hope you had a really, 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 really fun time. And, good night and whatever. See y'all next time.
Oh, my phone died.
Okay.
Now I can't raid message. Oh.
Damn. See y'all next time. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Have a good
Does it...
time.
Wait. Oh, yeah.
What?
Alright, okay. Wait.
Wait.
Huh? The raid is fucking up because some clone... Okay, next time, clone, when I'm about to start a raid, don't pin a message or something that doesn't work good. Oh, thank you. Alright, okay. Bye, everyone. Bye. Bye, bye, bye.